Hello, hello, test, test, test. Good evening. Hope everyone is doing well, having a wonderful holiday season, having a restful vacation, or just existing normally, safely, warmly. Thank you so much again for everybody who stopped by both at the Game Awards show a little while ago, as well as the celebration that we had last week. As a quick little recap, it has been about a year since I started streaming. It's been a super fun journey. I'm very grateful for everyone's contributions and presence and participation in the streams. I think I've learned a lot. I hope that I've been able to pass along some of that knowledge and information to others as well. Genuinely, I feel like I understand the series better, and having the opportunity and motivation to share it with y'all and to show up on a regular basis and talk about it has been just fucking great. So I am very much appreciative of all that. Tonight we're going to be doing something a little special. I think the first Naruto debate that I heard, not the first ever, right? But the first Naruto debate that I heard that kind of inspired my interest in getting back into the series and starting to talk about it with people was the legendary seminal debate between SwagKage and Six versus AfroSenju and Kabuki. And that particular debate was concerning Sakura versus Madara. The premise of the debate was that Sakura, because she has essentially extremely high levels of chakra, and potentially, according to like Swag and Six's argumentation, potentially more chakra than Madara, that she should be able to like speed blitz in one shot. That like EMS Madara specifically, Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, aka Alive Valley of the End Madara, before he died before the war. So the last time we see Madara, alive before the war arc when he fights Hashirama, it's that version of Madara going up against Boruto era Sakura. So, using her feats from the Shin arc in the Seventh Hokage and the Scarlet Spring, which is like a Boruto, essentially like a prequel novel, right? No, not novel. Excuse me. It's like a I don't know if it's technically a side story or if it's a prequel manga to the events. It seems to happen before the versus Momoshiki arc, so I'll call it a prequel. That might not be 100% accurate though. But anyway, using the feats from this arc and using the feats from the war and the versus Kaguya arc, the idea is that Swag and Six were trying to establish Sakura Boruto era over EMS Madara. So right out of the gate, that particular topic is something that I think a lot of people are going to find spicy, just because on paper it results in people saying out loud with their voices on the camera, Madara loses to Sakura. And any permutation of those words is going to piss some people off. And I think Swag was probably well aware of that. I think Swag and Afro and all of them, like, they mentioned this at the beginning of the debate, that it was kind of a provocative topic from the get-go. But as I mentioned on the stream before, I find provocative topics very interesting. And as long as everybody is, treating each other with a certain amount of respect, or like they're in on the joke, at least, so to speak, I think the provocative topics personally are the ones that get me motivated, the ones that, wind up eliciting a strong response from me, oftentimes because I'm like extremely nitpicky, or not nitpicky, that's not exactly the right word I'm looking for. But like if I see something that I think is wrong, like I can't help myself, like I have a strong instinct that's like, oh, there's something wrong with that, but I also have a bit of self-doubt, and I'm like, but I'm not sure, right? I know that I feel like there's something wrong with that. I feel like I need to say something about it, but before I open my fucking mouth, I need to do a lot of research. I need to go over it a bunch of times to make sure that I understand things. But then I want to come back with that understanding and participate and have a conversation. And that's essentially what has happened to me over the past couple of years with this debate. The first time I went through it, I was like, oh, okay, well, I know who Swag is. Like, a lot of people, if they know one or two Naruto YouTubers, they probably know like Swag and unfortunately Seth, right? Especially, well, this would have been the case a few years ago. Nowadays, like, other names have become more prominent, especially since Swag isn't as active as he used to be, and Seth is doing Seth things. But that being said, I think I came into it with a bias, honestly. The first time I heard the debate, I was like, oh, I know who Swag is, and I know that he's a good content creator, and I like his stuff. And so if he and Six are going up against other people, then they're like the underdogs, right? They are the ones who probably are the shit starters. And I was unfair to Kabuki and Afro. Uh, Granted, over the course of the debate, which lasted about 3 hours, um, Kabuki winds up being, as he usually was at that time when he was doing debates, maybe still is if he's still doing debates, he's a real shit starter. And not necessarily like in the same way that Noodles, somebody like him, or even Apollo is. Like, he's not, he's just more like an annoying, loud, boisterous, noisy character than he is like a hostile or like it doesn't seem like he's coming from a place of malice. He just like he's very animated, very expressive, and has no filter. Um, and so this results in the him saying some pretty silly things, and then the debate escalating and kind of going off the rails. And Swag, with his own like temperament and all that, things get kind of heated for everybody involved, and it's tempting. This was certainly my first impression to be like, well, Kabuki is the shit starter. He's the one who's saying the most ridiculous things. He's saying out of pocket stuff, and he also has trouble tracking some of the arguments. He doesn't seem to be as like adept in the debate tactics or debate rhetoric or whatever. You know, he doesn't necessarily. He's not necessarily going to know the definition of Occam's razor or like what the fuck was the other thing that came up recently? But he's not going to be able to like rattle off philosophers' names and like talk about all the different logical fallacies and stuff, because he's just like a casual fan that likes talking about things, likes debating things, as far as I can tell. But it isn't in that same debate bro mentality. And when I talked to like I chatted with Afro on stream a little bit, and he kind of said, I don't want to misquote him here, but I think he said something along the lines of. Having this debate taught him that he doesn't like doing debates, right? Like he did this debate, and he did one with Kabuki and him did a debate with Seth as well, and like it's kind of interesting to hear him say that like the key takeaway that he had from doing anime debates with that community, with those people, is that he just doesn't like doing anime debates, right? So these are not people who have like a very strong stake in debating competitively or like being super aggressive or tactical or whatever, laying traps. Like, I don't think that they trained for that in any way. They just kind of showed up and they were like, yeah, let's have a conversation about this shit. And then it just kind of like got out of hand. But anyway, all this is just to say that the first time I listened to the debate, I was definitely like, well, Swag knows what he's talking about, so obviously everything he says is right. And his opposition must be wrong about everything too. I mean, look, they sound stupid, they sound goofy, they're going off the rails. But what I've come to realize over the past couple of years, which has been very interesting to me, is that I've gone back and forth over and over again about who I think won the debate overall. I think if I had to pick somebody who is most in control of the debate, making the most reliable and reasonable statements, I gotta give it to Six, hands down. Although he loses his cool towards the end, like, it's understandable considering the level of frustration, and he was more than willing to volunteer information to go off on tangents to help Kabuki understand. Like, he genuinely tried to be patient and tried to kind of get things focused and bring things back down to earth. He made a concerted effort to try to be like, wait, let's hammer this point home first. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's not go off on like a spiraling tangent or whatever. He's willing to sidebar or whatever to try to get things through. I disagree with some of his points. I don't think he necessarily always, any given statement that he makes, any given piece of evidence that he made, I might agree with or disagree with. I'm not saying that like he had a perfect recollection of every scene or whatever. But overall, you got to give him credit for steering the debate and trying to steer the debate in a positive way, especially in the first couple hours of it. Swag also, he brings a certain, like, Swag and Afro both bring a certain amount of charisma and like positivity, I suppose you could call it, to the debate at a baseline, and Kabuki brings the fireworks. But at the end of the day, there was some stuff that Swag said that absolutely made sense, and some that I wound up scratching my head over. And just like the Kabuki and Afro debate versus Seth, I mean, if you listen to that debate, the premise of that debate was like Seth was arguing that Minato could defeat all the Akatsuki by blitzing them and one-shotting them and cutting off their heads before they could even react, which is fucking ridiculous, obviously. But like, at the time when I first heard it, he sounded like the knowledgeable debate person, and the other two guys sounded like just some casual fans. So obviously I went with the knowledgeable debate bro, right? Obviously he knew what he was talking about. But if you listen back to that debate now, at least for me, with the knowledge that I have now and having, had a bunch of conversations with people and made some videos and stuff, I actually think that overall, like Kabuki and Afro, especially for not being debaters, held their own extremely well, and they were able to call out the bullshit, and they were able to like point out certain like serious mistakes and serious inconsistencies with Seth's arguments. They just didn't have the debate chops to like hammer it home and be aggressive and like win the bout, so to speak. But they made good points, and the fact that two people who are casual fans who aren't like in the ring training to be debaters were still able to point out the the flaws and still articulate some of them, despite being goofy sometimes, or despite being like Kabuki doing Kabuki things. I think it shows that passion and care and appreciation of the series itself is more than enough to have a positive conversation. You don't need to actually train in debate tactics in order to be able to fucking talk to somebody about a series and disagree with them and try to understand it on a deeper level, obviously. But I think that there is this mentality, especially in the competitive aspect of the debate scene, where people will be like, you have to talk about the series in a certain way, you have to have a certain baseline level of knowledge. Like, there is this almost gatekeeping that happens where people are like, okay, if you're not performing at this level, then your opinion isn't valid. And that's just not true, right? That's not true at all. Obviously, it helps to have, if you're coming into a competitive debate, it helps to have scans. It helps to be familiar with the topic. You should reread the chapters in advance just to have things fresh in your mind. There's a certain amount of etiquette and a certain amount of like just best practices that I think people should do in order to keep the conversation flowing and all that, and just to make sure that they're remembering things correctly. But the sort of gatekeepy elite, like pseudo-elitist monopoly that we can have sometimes over the debate scene and the content we discuss, I think is totally unwarranted. And frankly, I'm impressed with like how much like casual debaters are able to contribute to the conversation sometimes without having any like debating chops or whatever. And that being said, I think the debate it's a lot of fun. It's just entertaining in and of itself, but it's also fun to study because you can identify specific points where the debate starts to fall apart, or where like a really valid point is made. And I think it's worth examining, just to be like, okay, they're definitely lessons that we can learn from it, right? Despite the fact that it's not, I don't know that anybody's still debating this topic in 2025, right? But the point is, like you can learn a lot about how people talk to each other, talk around each other, and maybe how to try to get things to simmer down when they get heated. And so that's kind of what I want to talk about today. Just want to have fun, chill stream, no pressure, nothing particularly dramatic or anything like that. Just going to kind of share my thoughts on this particular debate that I found entertaining and inspiring. So, first of all, I want to point out a couple of things from the Seventh Hokage and the Scarlet Spring, which is, as I mentioned, the quote-unquote prequel or side story manga that happens before the Momoshiki arc. Not to mention also that we are going to look at some stuff from the Madara fight, and like the resurrected Madara fight, the Jubidara fight. And then we'll jump right into the debate. Obviously, we're not going to have time to go through like the entire thing, stopping moment by moment, but I've written down some time codes of specific things that we can look at. And then, of course, if you guys want to jump around to anything, let me know. Let me know in the comment section as well if you're watching this in VOD format. If there's anything you want me to talk about next time, I'm more than happy to go back over everything. But let me go ahead and catch up on chat first. I see we have the ritual sanitization and cat boxing. Sorry, I hope you are doing well. I really do appreciate you sharing all that stuff about Carrie. Obviously, I don't have the full depth of knowledge to be able to like comment on it, because I haven't like experienced all the iterations of the stories myself. But as you're probably aware, I really like talking about and seeing adaptations. Voice crack there. Adaptations and seeing basically like how different people approach the same material, and it sounds like there have been some genuinely compelling and interesting iterations on that story. I'm really glad that you have found a way to connect with it, and that it means so much to you. It really is special when you can connect with something like that. And look, I don't want to pressure you at all, ever, but genuinely, you basically have written the script for a video. in chat, and I don't mean that in a derogatory sense, just to be very clear. Like, I think it's a good thing, right? When I read through it, I started hearing it in the voice that you use when you do your Zelda lore analysis videos, and I can just imagine people sitting there and loving this and getting a lot out of it. So again, no pressure, but if you feel inclined to even just like record what you wrote and then just do a little slideshow of some screenshots from the movie, that in and of itself, I'm sure people would love to hear that. So sorry, I said yeah, 100%. Yeah, I got a little cheeky with the thumbnail tonight. I'm sure you all know why. No shade or anything, but just venting a little bit, visually speaking. Sorry says that was the first fight of what has been a shonen. And I gotta say, the Leaf Village really showed up tonight. Oh, and what needs to happen now is they need to win to hit more jutsu. Oh, if they want to win, they need to hit more jutsu. Let's take a look at the win-to-loss ratio, and I gotta say, scoring another win could give them an advantage. Scoring a win in the 4th Ninja War could potentially be a game changer. What I will say, John, is that if both teams are really moving out there, you have to move when you're out there. Any shinobi could tell you that, and that's what's more. You gotta take it minute by minute. Taking it minute by minute is really the only way to go out there. But I will say, sometimes it comes down to who wants it more, John. 100%. You can really see that both teams really do want it tonight. 100%. They're both giving 110% out there. 100%. That's 100% of 110%, John. 100%. And listen, when you break it down, each team gets 20 minutes per allied shinobi forces fight. They got to make the most of it. Both teams have got to come to play. That's shonen, John. That's the genre. And I will say, if we could just take a look at this moment right here where Madara stabs Sakura, take a look at that, John. What would you say about that? That was certainly a hit, John. I'm reading it in like an announcer voice. This is great. Shinobi living can be a physical game. That's right, John. But this isn't anyone's first rodeo. Certainly not, John. And they're giving everything they can out there to put enemies in graves. So you take a look at both teams tonight. They're both talking about this season, one fight at a time. That's what you got to do, John. This is Shinobi Alliance versus Madara and Obito. What each team needs to do is play a team, and only time will tell who can do that better. Both teams will need to stay focused and step up their games. There are no iron teams, as they say. It's about who executes better. They've got to dig deep. This is what it's all about. They need to play to not lose. They need to stay focused. 110% of 100%. I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you for that intro. Sorry, it then says, hold it, Lieutenant, before you do something you'll regret. You have proof of my innocence despite your clumsiness. We don't need the original snapshot. The negative will serve the same purpose. And now back to jotting down notes. Once again, Saria on her reference game. I'm sorry that I don't immediately know what that's from. Oh, yeah. Hey, Roman, how's it going? It's good to see you. Yeah, I went full on D mode, D1 mode there. Yeah. Just like, it's about who executes better. They're not going to dig this deep. It's about they need to play not to lose. Stay to focus on the motherfucker. Just getting as many syllables out there as I possibly can, because that's how you win. The opponent literally can't win if they don't say as many words as you, because you have a bigger number than they do, which means you scale over them, which means you win. Obviously, this is how we win. But no, that's cool. I appreciate the. That reminds me of that thing, like the ticket pays for the whole seat, but you will only need the edge. T1 working at McDonald's, yeah. Dude, I don't know what that motherfucker has against food service employees, man. They're just giving people a nice bite to eat. I don't know why we got to slander them so heavily, especially since one of my first jobs was working at a 7-Eleven, like giving people snacks in the middle of the night and shit, like night shift workers, of which I was one myself. Like people got to eat. You have to win to not lose. That reminds me of Saria is have you ever seen this? One second. Fuck. Well, got a new keyboard and I don't know how to use it properly. One second, I'm trying to find this thing. This isn't the one that I was looking for specifically, because there was a whole long thread about it, but this I'm sure you've seen this one before. You have to win to not lose has very similar energy to this. Yeah, I think you're right, Ryoman. I think he does freestyle, and it is a talent. Like, it takes a certain amount of acumen to be able to, and confidence and flow to be able to just like let the syllables out like that. It is impressive in its own way. So yeah, I'm glad to hear that you are well. I am well too, yes. I'm actually doing quite well. I think I needed this break from work more than I knew I did. It's given me a chance to reset a little bit, and just kind of enjoy my family and I've been cooking more. I've been playing some Night Rain. I've been listening to the Witcher books. I've basically just been kind of taking things day by day. Took a deep breath and kind of reset. Spent some time with some good people, and yeah, I definitely feel like I don't know. Have you ever had an experience where somebody like cracks your back or like gives you a massage and it's like you didn't realize how much tension you were carrying until after that, after you got what you were like the massage or whatever it was, or like you pop your neck or you pop your hip or something like that, and it's like, oh my god, I didn't realize how badly I needed that. That was kind of like what this past week has been. So I'm definitely feeling better now. Raymond says Madara speed blitzes and one shot Sakura. Yeah, I think that's a very real possibility. Madara is in top 4 in Naruto, Boruto, and power scaling. Yeah. Well, I think it depends on which incarnation of the character you mean, right? Because like, Valley of the End Madara is definitely really fucking strong, but he's on par with Hashirama, and then both of those characters have other characters like Jupidara, Sage of Six Paths, Naruto, and Sasuke, and then like arguably 8th Gate Guy, some other characters who are probably around that level. Not very many, right? But Kaguya, Obito, DMS, Kakashi, like there are other characters up there. So I think you could argue that they're like top 4 is maybe, I think, slightly contentious. Maybe top 5 or top 6. I think there's a little bit more wiggle room, and especially since there's different like versions or incarnations of Madara, I think there's different there's some flexibility there. But I don't disagree with you overall. Like top 10 is not controversial at all. Top 8 is getting slightly more, but not really. Once it starts to get to 4, 3, I think you'll find more people with stronger arguments. But yeah, essentially I agree with you. Three-Eyed Jupidara, yeah, like that, definitely one of the peaks of the verse, right? Like DMS, Kakashi, Kaguya. If we're not including Boruto, it's like DMS, Kakashi, Kaguya, Naruto. I think I would, off the top of my head, I would probably rank it something like Kaguya at the top, and then Sage of Six Paths, Naruto, and Kakashi below that, basically tied. Maybe Kakashi a little bit higher, depending on the matchup. And then below that, Sasuke. And then below that, like, fuck, I don't know. Now I'm starting to say shit that I need to research for. But, like, obviously, like, Sage of Six Paths, Sasuke, Jupidara, and Jubito are in there as well. And then, like, maybe Minato, probably not. But, fuck, why am I blanking on his name? Oh yeah, Guy, right? Specifically in his like 8th Gates formation. In terms of like AP output, is definitely up there, and speed is definitely up there. In terms of overall like longevity and likelihood to win the fight, not so much. But yeah. Let's see. Sorry, says I'm getting. Sorry. Also, I'm sorry if I'm slightly more silent than usual. Like I said, I'm watching Carrie 2013 again and going scene by scene and breaking down the homosexual undertones of the film. Yeah, that's totally fine. I think I'm really glad that you have found something that you have your teeth sunk into, so to speak, and I hope that it keeps being a source of inspiration and enjoyment for you. Feel free to chime in at any point if you want to. Also, feel free to just kind of have this be background noise. I'm going to be rambling as I usually do, so no worries whatsoever. Hope you have fun. And honestly, like, I've been working on something like that too, where I'm comparing a story from The Witcher to an episode of the TV show, and I've watched the episode 5 or so times and read the books 5 or so times, or read that chapter 5 or so times, and I think I'm probably going to need to double that before I'm done, because I want to make sure I catch everything, right? So I understand like wanting to go over it over and over again to make sure that you like catch everything. Kaguya over Jubito, yeah, over Madara, over okay, I see. So yeah, I think I would swap this around a little bit, because intuitively I think Madara is probably above Jubito, just because he seems to be able to handle, like Obito says that he struggles to maintain even one Rinnegan, right? And then he's like, I shudder to think at like what the real, like how powerful the real owner would be if he got both of them. So I would probably put Jubito over Madara over Jubito, and then I would probably put, well, here's the thing, like, Sage of Six Paths, Naruto was able to contend with Kaguya, so he'd probably go over Jubito. But it's weird, because then, like, it doesn't seem like he was able to, like, defeat Madara. like he wouldn't have been able to defeat EMS Madara on his like Three-Eyed Madara on his own, right? Naruto versus Three-Eyed Madara, it's not a clear victory for Naruto. But then Kaguya gets like so much more chakra and has like much stronger abilities and all that. But then there are exchanges where Naruto goes up against her and is holding his own and damaging her and like countering her attacks and stuff like that. And then there's that one speed blitz. So it's weird. He's like not able to defeat somebody much less powerful than Kaguya, but then able to do better against Kaguya in a one-on-one matchup. So I think the scaling is a little inconsistent there, but yeah. Not saying this is top 8, but just rank the people you mentioned. Yeah, I definitely see where you're coming from. I think that just if you go off of the feats against Kaguya, like Kakashi, in DMS specifically, like when he has Obito's chakra in him and he's like in the perfect Susanoo, I think there's an argument that with the Kamui Shuriken and stuff like that, he could probably outperform Naruto. Like if he really just went crazy and started spamming like Kamui Shuriken, like even in the games, right? Like I don't think the game representation is canon, but there's that whole scene where Kakashi's flying around in the perfect Susanoo and just like spamming the Kamui Shuriken and like goes up against Kaguya in her like big ball form and manages to like rip off all of her limbs, or like I don't know what you call it, like warp away parts of her limbs, and just like has a really great showing. He has a great showing in the manga as well. So I think in a bloodlusted battle between DMS Kakashi and Naruto, there's an argument that DMS Kakashi has a win condition with like his Kamui enhanced abilities potentially. But yeah, I mean, like, then once you start, I find it difficult to think of a single character who could win against Kaguya in a 1v1 matchup in OG Naruto. I think as long as, once you get to Boruto, I think as long as Ishiki can do shit with portals, right, like he could get out of Kaguya's dimensions, then I think he could beat her. And I think anybody that scales to her and above her could beat her as well. But I don't, like, personally, I don't think Fuse Momo is doing it. I don't think Base Momo is doing it for sure. I don't think Toneri is doing it. I think that whole statement about Toneri being the strongest enemy is complete nonsense. So, yeah, that's, but before I get off on a whole tangent there, yep. Naruto simply locked in. The power of locking in is a real thing. Like, mental amps, focus amps, etc., whatever you want to call them. These are real forces in the Naruto universe. Difficult to quantify for a debate, but yeah, it from a casual standpoint, it's very clear that characters, when they really focus and when things come down to a critical moment, they essentially level up. There's actually a statement in the data book that I was reading recently that said something along the lines of, let me see if I can find it actually, because it might just be fun to go over. So I'm working on this, so it's like terribly formatted, but I am working on a like just going through all the data books and looking at as many statements as I can and trying to figure out how many are accurate or not. So far, I'm learning a lot of really interesting stuff. I've done this before, but I'm doing it again with a specific focus now. So let me look for the one on the Sharingan. Where did I actually, one second. Why don't I just look for this Sharingan? Okay, so these are quotes from, actually, you know what, fuck it. Let's go to Narutoversity, and let's just go to the data books and fan books. Let's go to the first data jutsu files. Let's look for Sharingan. Okay, so again, this is from the first data book. This is from Naruto Versity. I think it says, where the fuck is it? Oh, wait, hang on a second. This is the Kikagenkai page. I'm looking for the specific Sharingan. Yeah, here we go. Is it this one here? Yeah, so this phrasing here. Should one find themselves in some kind of dire situation, the Uchiha blood will demonstrate its accumulated experience, and never will those who have inherited it know any limits, right? So there's a lot of statements like this actually in the data books, which I'm sure you guys are already aware of, but basically they are essentially saying that an owner of the Sharingan will become as strong as they need to given any particular situation, right? Like, and I think there's a statement from Naruto as well, something along the same lines where it's like when Naruto locks in, he will become as strong as he needs to, and therefore he will never lose or something. Let me see if I wrote it down. I'm gonna spend too much time on this, but let's see. Naruto says the word. Oh yeah, so every time Naruto says the word Hokage, he gets stronger. This pure aspiration creates strength. So I'm sure somebody out there, I think I actually heard somebody make this argument in a debate. Like if Naruto stood in a corner and said Hokage over and over and over again, he would get stronger every single time. Almost like whatever that, I forget the term for it, but the thing where if a Saiyan gets close to death and then like heals, they get stronger. They literally argued that Naruto gets stronger every single time he just says the word. Like these statements about immeasurable chakra, but I don't know if I'll be able to find it now, but there was a statement about Naruto somewhere. I'll see if I can find it for next time, that like essentially he will, whenever he's in a dire situation, he will factually focus and get stronger so he can never lose, right? So we'll talk. I don't want to spoil it. I am going to make a video that goes over the databook statements in a great amount of detail. And one of the things I'm going to do, I think I'm going to make like a 4-part series of like 4 30-minute videos. Oh yeah, there's another one from the sexy jutsu. Let's see. Right, so yeah, this by the way is the same source that people are using to say like the Yaramir can block any attack and Haku is like the speed of light, right? So this is the entry on sexy technique. His talent for pranks led him to imagine this attractive technique. That's fine. But then we have an entry from Monoko over here. With the help of the transformation technique, Naruto transforms into a perfect girl. Perfect girl, question mark. Its proportions are whoa, and his chest just something oof, a super sexy girl like you've never seen before. It's fascinating. So Naruto taught the sexy technique to Konohamaru. It's wow 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 too, but not as much as Naruto yet. So yeah, I have a lot more to say about that going forward, but I wish I could find it. There is a statement that like characters, or maybe it's Lee actually. Hang on, let me see if it might have been Lee rather than Naruto. And if I can't find it, then I'll go back to the fucking actual topic. Kankuro, Hayate, Suzuki, where is Lee? Nechi, Hinata. Here we go. This isn't exactly what I was looking for, but yeah, there's definitely statements along these lines, right? Like, unlimited potentialities, tenacious willpower won't lose to anyone. I think this is what I was thinking of, where basically it's like, you know, because of his willpower, if he focuses, he won't lose to anyone. Yeah, this kind of sucks, but it's like, conversely made him feel Lee's unlimited potentiality, front lotus, huge tree. Should have just copied this into the fucking, thing. Document. Anyway, it's somewhere in here. I don't want to spend too much time like scanning for it, but it might be like in here. All right, it's somewhere in here. Front lotus, huge tree. Yeah, I think I'm gonna just have to copy in the statements directly. Anyway, hopefully you guys will find that interesting. Feel free to look into it more, and then I will actually get my shit together when I make this video for the future. Getting back on topic though, let me catch up with chat. Kaguya isn't skilled in close range, so obviously Naruto will have some success in taijutsu, especially with the clones. Yeah, I think that's reasonable. Like, characters have different strengths and weaknesses. I also think that characters in Naruto don't necessarily have great durability, which is something that we've talked about before. I think an interesting topic for a video could be just evaluating durability across the series, because, like, you know, we'll talk about this later, but actually let's skip ahead because we're going to talk about some of the Shin stuff anyway. But I'm sure if you guys have read through this, you'll be familiar with this particular event where, is it here? No, I think I got ahead of myself. But yeah, so like SwagKage and or not, in the debate that we're gonna talk about, the suggestion from Swag and Six comes up that maybe Shin is stronger than Madara. And here we have him being pierced by simple metal weapons. So it's like, this guy is supposed to be stronger than EMS Madara, but he's getting pierced with, like, as far as I know, regular blades. Like, they're not like the Kusanagi that have a propensity to pierce through all things, even if that's, like, we're supposed to take that seriously. It's probably just a legend, but yeah. But then, of course, you guys are probably familiar with this as well, where Naruto's going up against, like, one of the Kid Shin clones. What chapter is it in? There's this event where he gets, like, a sword through his chest. Right, so here, this is in chapter 5 going into chapter 6. So Sasuke manages to deflect these individual, like, little blades, and then, interestingly, Shin grabs onto Sasuke's sword, and then he, like, gets his, Shin is cut by the sword, right? And then... So that's like either to kind of like respond to what you're saying, Realman. It's either a feat for the sword or an anti-feat for Shin's durability, and then of course this happens, and you can say like, okay, well this is just like this is Sasuke's sword and it gets plunged into Naruto's chest, but it is Naruto in Sage mode with like Kurama's chakra, and he still manages to get this like wound through his body, right? And then even if you're like, okay, well that doesn't really matter because maybe the Kusanagi blade is just like that powerful and that able to cut through things, then again, like, unless there's a databook statement or something that I'm unfamiliar with, here we have these what I think are literally just metal weapons. It's just like a metal blade, right? And Sasuke, one of the strongest characters in the series, period, jumps in front of Sakura and can't even manage to muster enough chakra to block like the bladed weapons, right? So the base durability of his flesh, like I know his performance isn't great because he doesn't have like his full ocular jutsu back. He doesn't have his Susanoo back yet either. But also, like, these are just pieces of metal, and his base durability, his like flesh durability, does not withstand metal. I can't think of any instances in the series where like somebody has a knife thrown at them and the knife just like crumples or bounces off of them, like bullets bounce off of Kid Goku and fucking Dragon Ball and stuff like that, right? I don't think there's any feats in Naruto of stuff like that happening. I think characters are still vulnerable to piercing weapons. And like another good example is, I forget what chapter it's in, but like when Kakashi gets transported into the Kamui dimension, there's a scene where like Obito's torso is like partially in the Kamui dimension and Kakashi punches it, and like that one punch, not even like a chakra, like a punch that has like a specific like chakra cloak around it or anything like that, just a punch, obviously still a superhuman punch, but just a punch makes Obito like fucking cough up blood and shit. So yeah, I do think durability, like, it's tempting and even convenient for the sake of debate to just be like, well, the more chakra you have, the more durability you have. I think a better way of putting it is the more chakra you have, the more durability you can have, but you need to like focus or shape it or actually manifest it in some sort of a way that actually gives you that bonus. So like I was just reading this the other day. The first where is it actually? Is it the character files? No, there's something. Oh yeah, so first data book jutsu files, right? So if you read over here, this is from the first data book, page 154. Ninja techniques, the unique ability that makes a ninja worthy of that name, the techniques. Ninja techniques can temper the body, refine your wisdom, and train the mind only after you master them, right? So granted, this is technically talking about ninjutsu, but you could just like look at the way that characters use taijutsu and how just converting stamina into taijutsu can increase your striking strength and stuff like that. And you could infer, like, okay, as long as you are making chakra, as long as you are drawing from your stamina pool to produce chakra in one way or another, that chakra can enhance you, but you have to actually, like, use it. Just having raw lumps of chakra hanging around, unless you're a Biju, I guess, is, like, not necessary. I don't know. Intuitively, it makes sense, right? You just have more of this substance around with you, and the substance itself can be, like, can have, like, physical durability and tangibility to it. So why wouldn't it make you stronger? That's what feels intuitively correct. But then if you actually look at the series, there are all these weird anti-feats where that doesn't seem to be the case. So I think it's something I want to research more, something I want to do a deep dive into. I'll probably do that after I finish the data book analysis stuff. Anyway, Kaguya's OP due to her hack, says Ryomen. Regeneration and amount of chakra. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think that's a fair assessment. I mean, there's a lot of fucking crazy stuff she can do, even regardless of physical stuff, right? Like, just even if we're talking about just like battlefield removal, if she's bloodlusted and she just wants to dump you in a dimension, like most characters, I think, if she just dumps them in an ice dimension and then immediately leaves, like anybody without a Rinnegan is gonna, or without a reverse summoning technique or something, is gonna be fucked, right? So her stats are good, but every high tier has stats to keep up with her and damage her. Yeah. I I wouldn't be surprised. Like, I am not prepared to die on this hill by any means, but like, if somebody told me, "Hey, eighth gate guy could damage Kaguya with a kick," I probably wouldn't like even contest that. Right? It just seems intuitively correct. But obviously, like if we're debating, I'd have to research it. Kaguya's over Ishiki. Lack of good regeneration is a huge weakness. I don't know. Well, the Ishiki, despite the well, fuck. Okay, this can go into a whole thing, right? But like, if we assume, and I don't know if this is a safe assumption, I actually think it's might not be true. But if we assume that Naruto and Sasuke as adults are at least equal to their level of strength that we see in the versus Kaguya fight in part one, then the overall performance that Ishiki has against them and the stuff that he has, like the Daikoku Ten and all that, and the Sukuna Hikuna, like I definitely think that he has win conditions against Kaguya. The biggest thing that Kaguya would present to him as a difficulty is like the ETSO. I don't know if he can counter that, but he has ways of getting around it and avoiding it. And BFR via, Amino Minaka. But if all you need to be able to get out of that is, well, I mean, like Momoshiki and Kinshiki seem to have no problem like coming in and out of Kaguya's dimensions as well. So if my assumption is correct that like Otsutsuki can just go to other Otsutsuki's places when they want to, then I think Kaguya's going to have a much harder time. You could also potentially argue that since Kaguya apparently off-guarded Ishiki, that that's not proof that he needed to be off-guarded per se, but at the same time it's like, well, they didn't win in a straight up clash, so you might use that as part of an argument to be like, well, she attacked him by surprise, so like if he was just like an ant beneath her boot or whatever, she wouldn't have needed to do that. She could just kill them whenever, right? Like Blatzetsu is not winning against Madara in a one-on-one, but he's able to kill him with a surprise attack. So I don't think that's gonna win you an argument in itself, but it's maybe worth mentioning. Let's see. Oh, lack of regeneration is a huge weak. Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, that's worth considering too. I hadn't really thought about that. Ryoman says, by the way, I will need help from you on one thing related to Naruto knowledge. In some areas I'm weak because I've only seen it like 7 years ago. Yeah, no problem, man. Like I feel like every time I do a stream or reread the series or read the data books or whatever, I learn something new. Like, it's 700 chapters. There's a lot of stuff that comes up, and also just a lot of different arguments that people have made over the years. It's impossible, at least for my brain, to keep track of everything. So we're gonna learn together, I'm sure. That's one of the major goals that I have for these streams anyway. So feel free to ask. If I don't know, I'll be honest, and I'll try to think of of something to look up later. Let's see. He literally lost several times upskills. Yeah, so that's a good point, right? Like, it's important to understand that any anti-feat, like for character A versus character B, any anti-feat for character A could just be or could also be a feat for character B, right? So like if a blade manages to pierce Ishiki, that you could say that's an anti-feat for Ishiki, or you could say it's a feat for the blade. And determining which one of those is the case, you'll probably need to know more about like, well, what actually is the blade made of, and how durable is Ichiki, right? So you'll need to look for other pieces of evidence to go a little bit further on that to figure out which one it is. But yeah, I think it's important to entertain that both of those things are potentially the case. And yeah, Ryoman, if it is actually amped by chakra, then yeah, it would be a feat, not necessarily for the metal in the blade itself, right? It would be a feat for like the caster using it. But I think you guys will probably remember back in chapter like 310 or something. I don't remember exactly where, but when Asuma and Naruto, okay, so it's going to be a little further than this. Naruto is doing his training with the shadow clones. Gonna be a couple chapters further, I suppose. Yeah. He goes to see Asuma to learn about his chakra nature. So I think it will be in this chapter is 317. Yeah, here we go, 317. So, Asuma runs his chakra through the chakra blades, and but it does, well, see, here's the thing, right? He runs his chakra through the blades, and then he says that these blades are forged from a special metal that can absorb the bear's chakra nature, right? So it's entirely possible that the weapons that Shin uses, and it actually would make total sense because he is an advanced fighter. He works specifically with like weapons in general. Like he has specific Mangekyo weapon manipulation techniques. He was an experiment from Orochimaru, who was always like doing crazy things and who had access to the Kusanagi. So like anecdotally, I think it makes perfect sense that these might be some kind of special weapons, that they're not just like, you couldn't just walk into an armory in Konoha and like pick one of these up off the rack, right? That in my headcanon anyway, I think that would be a perfectly reasonable interpretation. But something to keep in mind here is that we do have an explicit statement that these blades are special, and we also see that these blades can carry the chakra with them. Whereas over here, it initially looks like they might have chakra in them, but then we see that the blades themselves spin out, and then the chakra kind of gets left behind, for lack of a better phrase. And when they impact Sasuke, they're no longer covered in chakra. So I think it'd also be valid to, just look at this and be like, okay, right here, maybe you could argue that they're chakra infused, but over here, if they were chakra infused, but they also like had, if the series is following its own rules, then we would expect to see something like this to kind of indicate that, right? But if not, this means that like Sasuke's, the durability of Sasuke's skin is like sub wood level, or like comparable to wood level or whatever. And I felt wrong saying that out loud, right? But like, I do think that these are fundamentally anatomically human beings underneath all their shit, all their chakra armor and stuff like that, right? So this would also line up with the infamous Minato shin splinter thing. So I don't know. I think there's some nuance here, and the actual mechanics. This is why I want to make a video kind of going into more depth about it, because I think it's more confusing, at least to me, than it initially appears. Let's see. Should any use skill with their full power? Yeah, I'm honestly extremely fucking skeptical about the Shin stuff, but we'll talk about that later. You think Guy would completely destroy a large portion of Kage's body with physical strikes? That might be the case, because like when, like there's probably a scaling opportunity there, because when Naruto fights her with, fucking, yeah, like right here, he fights her with, what's his name? I can't remember his name. Sorry. Son Goku, right? Like he specifically is like, now for unparalleled physical strength. Oh no, it's Kokuo, right? He asks Kokuo for his or her assistance in getting unparalleled physical strength up, and then he uses physical strength as opposed to, like a Rasen Shuriken or whatever, to break out and physically punch Kaguya and knock her back. So I mean, like, this gets into some mathy, like, shenanigans that I'm not prepared to defend. But if you could get an estimate for Kaguya's mass here, and then you could get an estimate of how far she flies and, like, the size of these ice chunks that are being displaced, you could demonstrate that, like, this amount of force is sufficient in order to knock her back. And I think it would be pretty easy to look at, like, the explosion that Night Guy causes, and compare it to the size of the God Tree, and I think it'd be pretty easy to prove that he could do something like this, probably even in like with the Sekizo or whatever it's called. But then again, it doesn't seem like Kaguya is really bothered by this, right? Like she gets pushed back, but is she wounded? Is she even like really inconvenienced? I don't know. Anyway, oh yeah, that's a good point about the chakra nature too. Let me catch up though real quick. The only win cons of Ishiki are rods because they're faster than Sasuke's perception. Yeah, that could be. I mean, like, if we already established that Kaguya is, like, vulnerable to physical attacks, and especially, like, if Ishiki can shrink. Oh my god, I couldn't think of the word. It's fucking embarrassing. If he can shrink himself down to the size of like being able to get into Kaguya's ear and just like throw a rod in there through her brain or something like that, which I think would be in character for him, then I don't I don't really want to, what do you say, to rule out that possibility, right? Um, Saria says, I just think people need to accept the terms of the story. This character can destroy mountains but gets taken out by a kunai. Why? Because that's the kind of story this is, right? Yeah, I do think that, like, for the purposes of debating and power scaling, like, we try to put things into neat little categories. Oftentimes that just doesn't work out. There's more nuance. Like, the series, like, you'll hear this line over and over again. I know I talked about this last time, but basically, like, of course, the series creators care about power scaling because they need to scale their own universe, right? They have to have an internal scaling metric because otherwise characters would have arbitrary powers and their universe would fall apart. Therefore, they do power scaling. Therefore, we can apply power scaling to their series, and by apply power scaling, they're of course referring to rubrics like VSB, CSIP, and stuff like that. Um, Obviously, that doesn't work, right? The fact that, I mean, it might happen to work in some cases, but the fact that, like, authors try to have a managed power creep, so to speak, or like a, you know, a clearly defined progression of the strength and abilities of their characters within their own authorial work, doesn't mean that they are maintaining like this perfect enforced quantized mathematical consistency between their whole series. In other words, people make mistakes, and also, like, authors aren't bound to fan-made rubrics and creations in order to express themselves or tell their stories, right? I'm sure we agree on that, but yeah. Saria then says, like, Saint Seiya, for example, is way stronger than any Dragon Ball series, but Seiya gets stabbed by a sword from Hades, and we spend the entire sequel series trying to prevent him from essentially being crippled from that moment. Yeah, that's good, right? Like, I know you guys are familiar with the whole Stan Lee thing. Like, who would win in was it like Batman versus Superman, or that's not Marvel, but, you know, like Spider-Man versus Hulk. Whoever needs to, whatever the author wants to happen, right? Sorry, just needed a drink of water there. Why does it work that way? Because that's the terms of the story, exactly. Ryoman says, maybe it's a more special property to amp the weapons with the chakra nature than just with chakra. Yeah, that's a good point. It could be. I think I would still personally expect to see some kind of an aura or something, or just have some sort of an explanation. Like, here's the thing. It's not everything, obviously, in the series is explained to us explicitly. There's plenty of mysteries, there's metaphors, there's things that just go, like, left to interpretation, and that is what makes conversation interesting and analysis interesting. But it is also like a shonen manga that's geared towards teenage boys for the most part, and as a result, a lot of shit is explained extremely clearly, and the author, like, wants people to know exactly how things are working and takes time out of the series to specifically, like, give us lectures. Like, I know we've gone over this before, and I feel like I mention it every fucking stream, but, like, the entire story grinds to a halt completely in chapter 90, and we get 1, 2, 3, 4 whole pages, and then also this, we get 4 whole pages with all of these intricate explanations of how this works. And then, like, go to the tuning exams, right? Let's skip ahead to chapter 100, and I'm pretty sure we get, like, an exact description of how Neji's rotation works, and they, like, zoom out, and they're like, this is how this works, and here's how the trigrams work, and here's how this Byakugan works, and stuff like that. Like, I might not be finding the exact thing. Yeah, so what the heck just happened, right? Multiple people talk about it. We hear multiple people thinking about it from their perspectives. We get the diagrams. The whole story stops just so that everybody knows exactly what's happening. And it's just weird to me, like, not to make the mistake of doing an argument from ignorance or an evidence of absence thing or whatever, but, like, it is weird to me that if Kishimoto wanted us to think that these were special weapons, especially when he calls out stuff like the Kusanagi as having special properties, that there's just nothing ever mentioned. Like, it's a pretty big fucking oversight. And when we look at things like Minato being hit with that wood splinter, I think there is some precedent. I think there is, like, some, like, in good faith reason to just say the characters have, like, low base durability, and they get around that with chakra, right? Um, Even going back to the first Jutsu files, like if you read through this, like I think it's somewhere in here. But basically, like reading through the first data book, there's a few statements that like the reason why ninja are able to achieve superhuman feats is because of the use of techniques. Like Naruto characters at a baseline, just normally walking around not molding chakra, they're just people. They're just human beings. And they transcend the limits of their normal humanity by enhancing their body with chakra, right? So unless you have somebody with really weird anatomy or somebody who's just like a beast like the third Raikage or whatever, you're not gonna get like steel durability skin or anything like that, right? Unless you use a technique. Ryoman says, I mean, it's kind of obvious that they have insane levels of durability. You can argue they need to focus a lot of chakra in a specific moment. I think that's essentially what it is. I think it's sort of like a weird form of like parrying, right? They accumulate chakra in specific places, which is established. You know, it's not made explicit that like they do this to parry attacks or whatever, but gathering chakra in specific parts of the body is explained in terms of everything from like walking on water to Kabuto healing specific parts of his body faster. I mean, like it's a whole thing. Even like Sakura delicately and precisely gathering chakra in her fist for her big strikes. So, I mean, again, it's not stated explicitly, but it would make sense to me if we were supposed to come to the conclusion that they're also doing this for defensive purposes as well. Like we just don't, maybe I can't like think of the specific phrase or whatever, the specific quote, but like you can put two and two together and be like, okay, like if somebody normally can only, if a normal human being in Naruto, if they tried to punch a wall without molding chakra, their hand would break. And now they punch a wall after amping themselves up with chakra and the wall breaks instead of their hand. That kind of implies that their hand is more solid than the wall now. So yes, they were using chakra to enhance their striking strength and do more damage with their attack, but also that confers some durability onto their hand as well. And as long as we can agree with that, then we can probably loop back around and be like, okay, as long as they're putting chakra somewhere in that body, that part of their body, if it's being used actively, does get some bonus durability, at least in terms of like taijutsu usage. I think, right? But yeah. I personally think they're a human level without amping themselves with chakra. Yeah. Okay, so we're on the same page. You don't think cross-verse power scaling makes much sense. Fiction contradicts physics way too much to the point where you need to cherry pick to make sense of it sometimes. Yeah, I think this is a tautology, but like, I think the way to look at cross-verse scaling is like, if these things were true, then they would be true, right? Like, if we were to agree that these particular rules applied in both of these verses in this specific way, then it would be the case that X, Y, or Z thing would be true. So I think I've kind of likened it to speedrunning in the past, where like you decide ahead of time, these are the goals that we're going to have, these are the routes that we're going to allow, these are the cheats or glitches that we're going to allow or disallow or whatever, this is the category, etc. And as long as we agree with those rules, then we can run the competition according to that. I think it's just important to understand that like nothing is guaranteeing that the authors of any given work necessarily even made their world consistent or made their world adhere to real world physics so that they even understand real world physics, let alone two separate authors working on two completely separate IPs, just conveniently doing that so that we could argue about it, right? Like, we have to kind of get together and be honest with ourselves and admit, like, we are choosing to assume that this thing works this particular way because we want to argue about it in this particular way, and just have that little bit of humility, or at least accept that premise throughout the whole conversation. Sorry says, pretty much, I mean, again, Seiya at the end of the series gets stabbed by a sword and is out of commission for an entire sequel, but in the middle of the series he tanks a universe being destroyed. Damn, okay, yeah. And without his armor. Yeah, that's, so, yeah. Also, sometimes, like, I don't know, it's just more dramatic if people can get hurt sometimes and not hurt other times, right? Like, I think it'll probably be pretty hard to give a scientific and physics-based explanation for a mental amp. Like, why when a character, like, okay, so for Goku, right, like when he sees Krillin die, spoilers, he transcends into Super Saiyan and achieves a level of strength that he would normally never be able to do. And there's a like, it's because he has an emotional crit, it unlocks special power, and it's sort of implied, as far as I understand it, that that is part of Saiyan biology. So we don't know exactly why it is, unless it's in a data book that I haven't seen or whatever. But for whatever reason it may be, something about Saiyan biology enables them to go through that transformation. But for a lot of other series and a lot of other fights, you just have a character who is doing terribly, and then all of a sudden they get really mad, or things get on the line and they decide to go all out, or they just reach deep down and find some power that they didn't know that they had. Is there an explanation for that scientifically? Can you quantify that? Can you put that into terms of a DC or an AP thing? Or is it just the story getting dramatic? Like, obviously it's a second, right? So, okay. That being said, let's dive into the debate. I'm obviously happy to continue talking about other stuff as stuff may come up. Happy to kind of keep things fluid and all that. But I'm going to start jumping into the debate now. As a quick recap for anybody who's just jumping into the stream at this point, this is a debate between SwagKage and Six versus... why am I blanking on the names? It's SwagKage and Six versus AfroSenju and KabukiSage. The topic is Sakura versus Madara, specifically Boruto era Sakura versus EMS Valley of the End Alive Pre-War Arc Part 1 Madara. Well, I mean, like, the depiction that we get in the war in Part 2, like, the fight that we see, the power level that he has when he fights Hashirama, which chronologically happens before the war, but we see it as a flashback during the war, if that makes sense. So it's EMS Madara versus Boruto era Sakura. And Swag and Six have Sakura. Roman says, the funniest question is, why don't high-speed characters go insane when they have normal daily life when somebody FTL listens to another person speak? Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, like, my answer to that is... Well, it's... I mean, like, obviously my answer is that they're just not light speed. But think about... I feel like I saw a clip recently from a series where that exact thing was explored. And I think we talked about it a while ago, right? Where there's, like... the Flash or a character like that, or maybe an X-Men character, lives in a state where basically everything seems slowed down to him, and it's kind of agonizing because he has to talk like this all the time. And like, I annoyed the shit out of myself just doing that for 10 seconds. Like, he can't stop it, he can't turn it off, so he's always doing that shit. And like, I think if Kishimoto did actually, make these characters light speed, he did a really bad job of exploring what that means. He did a really bad job writing the series in such a way that actually specified what it's like to move at light speed and to exist in a light speed world with other light speed characters, how that affects the environment, how that affects a person's mind and perception. And this is why, like, I know people probably wouldn't like this in a debate, but like, genuinely, if you are gonna make the claim that Naruto characters are light speed, you are also like necessarily implying that Kishimoto just does a really, really shit job at world building with light speed stuff, because there's no real precedent or evidence or elaboration for it in the series. It's all from the data books, and the data books are extremely like hyperbolic, exaggerated, and inaccurate. And the next time somebody challenges me on that, I'm gonna have like I just reread the first data book, and I found that something like 82% of all the entries had at least one hyperbole or inconsistency. Like, the vast majority of entries in the first data book are just not to be taken literally, and that goes for character character files and jutsu files, right? Again, not to diverge too heavily into that topic, but yeah, it's really ridiculous. You're basically saying, because if you argue for like multiple characters throughout Naruto being light speed, you're essentially saying, and I don't mean to like strawman anyone in particular, but like what winds up being implied by that stance is that because a out of context databook statement or two says something and you chose to interpret it literally without getting it corroborated from the source itself, that the series conforms and shapes and molds around it despite the lack of like diegetically established world building. So to me, that just like completely falls apart. Ryoman says, well, yes, but someone like Naruto wouldn't be patient enough for that. Yeah, exactly. Like, he wouldn't put up with that shit. Or at the very least, like, somebody would say something. One character over the course of 700 chapters of Naruto, however many chapters of the side arcs and stuff, and, you know, the the 80 chapters of Boruto and the 25 or 8 or whatever of TBV and the like all 9 or 10 of the fucking movies, somebody besides Haku and fucking Mabui would have said speed of light. Do you realize how like fucking amazing it is for somebody to achieve speed of light travel? You may imagine like what you can actually accomplish if that's the case. Not even Minato uses that term. Not even like the fourth Raikage. Like nobody, not even any of the Otsutsuki, right? Like, so it's just really, really weird, almost like Uncanny Valley. Like the whole series was actually intended to be like calibrated to light speed after a certain point, but everybody in the series is like gaslighting us against that by never showing us any evidence for that and like never being explicit about it. So it just feels like a really weird disconnect, I'm not saying it's impossible. Like I could have missed something, or there could be some math-based calcs that prove it, but it's just really, really weird to me if it is true. Ryoman explanation that you can have is that characters' perception just speeds up when they actually start moving at high speed, but by that logic, you could just off-guard them anytime. Yeah, and like, so here's the thing. I think there's like a pro and a con that I want to offer for that. So one of the things that I think, again, like this is not going to be very helpful for folks having debates or being like super precise about things in like an argumentative context. Also, hello, is it Kyrox or Cairo X77? Thank you so much for checking out the stream. I hope you are doing well. Cairo, I'm just gonna call you Cairo for now, if that's okay, and then if not, please correct me, and I want to make sure I get your name right. Is it Cario? Cario. Cario says Madara made Sakura into a selfie stick. Is anyone gonna compare that after? No. Yeah. I think, so to kind of summarize the debate, I think the position that Swag and Six were taking is that Kaguya just has like exponentially higher chakra than Madara, and because of that, she can use that to amp her speed and her striking power, and so she would just blitz Madara before he had a chance to even react, or like to get his Susanoo up or anything, right? But even if he had his Susanoo up, that she would just punch right through it. In reading the series, though, and actually looking at her feats throughout the fight against Madara, I don't think that holds up. So yes, you're correct. She runs directly at him and just immediately gets skewered. Although they are arguing for EMS Madara, and the Madara that she charged towards was a much stronger version. So I mean, you could dispute whether or not it like backscales to it. But yeah, I see your point. I definitely see where you're coming from, and I think I would basically agree. Like, I don't think it's as clear cut as Swag and Six made it out to be. But debate is from fucking like 4 years ago, so I'm not trying to beat up on anybody for their previous positions. I do think it is worth studying, though. So let me just take a second and so I think it's actually going to be something like chapter 30. This we talked about back in our like Lee and Gara stream and all that, but I think this is important context to keep in mind when talking about like how characters' perception and movement speed work in the series overall. So one of the ways that I've tried to, for lack of a better word, debunk light speed is by showing that like somebody says like, here are some characters who are moving at light speed, and then I'll be like, okay, well, these characters who are supposedly moving at light speed are talking to each other. And they are talking to each other verbally with their mouths, which means that they are conducting sound towards one another, which means that like they probably aren't moving in a supersonic way, because otherwise they'd have to be like they'd have to speak at faster than light in order for their speech to be audible to one another if we apply like real world physics. And that doesn't make any sense. Like, how do you get sound to move faster than light, right? That just doesn't work. And so my like obviously that's there's problems with what I just said, but the my attempted debunk there is to be like, okay, well, if we're really going to get as literal about physics as possible here, then this would be the implication. But the counter to that, the way you can counter what I just said, is with this. So this is in chapter 38. This is when Sasuke and Lee fight for the first time. So Lee, hang on a second. Did I just skip past that actually? So Lee is fighting Sasuke, and I think Sasuke like tries to score a hit on him, and tries to like turn on the Sharingan in order to see what Lee is up to, and then Lee manages to kick him up into the air. And then this happens, right? So Sasuke is in the air and he hasn't even gone that far up, right? So he's still rising. And then Lee jumps up with him and manages to grab on him from behind. And so they're in the air. And if you try to get like some sort of physics-based calculation on how fast they're accelerating or whatever, how fast they should decelerate to come back to Earth, it should only be a couple of seconds probably. But look at what happens, right? I'm not going to say all this out loud, but like, that's right. No ninjutsu, no trickery. My moves are strictly physical, hard as you may find it to accept. If you right, read through that and it's like 30 or 40 seconds. Especially it goes on and it goes on, it goes on, it goes on. So do we really think that like Lee and Sasuke are literally actually floating in midair this whole time? Or do we think that like they're in some sort of weird time ramp, time slowdown effect thing, like Lee has some time manipulation ability, or do we think that maybe, you know, the fucking author is just deciding to represent this conversation in an abstract way? Like, are we really supposed to apply real world physics to this and basically just be like, oh yeah, they're floating or they're suspended in time? Or are we supposed to give Kishimoto like a little bit of artistic leeway, to, pun intended, I guess, sorry, to just express the information here in an abstract way that doesn't directly correlate to real world physics? I think that being overly literal about this scene is kind of missing the point, personally. But anyway, getting back to chat, sorry for the little divergence there. Sorry, I said, honestly, even if they were faster than light, it'd be like other forms of fiction. I mean, Dragon Ball as a whole, right? Then there's Captain Marvel or Superman or say or anything else that doesn't dig deep. Sometimes writers are just like, yeah, they can do that because it's cool as fuck. Yeah, and that's also like, I'm definitely not trying to put limitations on how the authors can express themselves and being like, you guys have to understand physics in order to talk about it, or you can't talk about it at all, right? Like, or even that the whole series itself has to be consistent. I mean, I think the reality of the matter is it would be convenient for us in terms of power scaling and debating and stuff like that if authors were perfectly consistent and had like all their rubrics and metrics and were using physics and all that. But I mean, they're artists and storytellers, and they're going to, I think a lot of the times, just lean more into the drama and excitement of the art and the power of the storytelling, and not necessarily like get their homework graded by some Melvin to make sure, like by the TA, to make sure like they're crossing all their I's and dotting their T's in terms of that stuff. Some people do. For some authors, it's very, very important to do that, but not everybody, right? So I just don't think we should assume it. We should go in and just examine it carefully with an open mind and see where it leads us, right? So let's see. Kario says Madara died after the war. What's the point of Sakura getting stronger after Madara dies? I think, yeah. So that was just like the premise of the conversation that they had, right? That like the idea being, and this is something that Kabuki actually brought up in the debate as well. Like, he asked, why aren't we talking about both of the characters in their strongest forms? Like, why wouldn't we talk about a stronger version of Madara versus Sakura? And I think Swag's response was like, well, you know, if you take the strongest version of Lee, for example, versus the strongest version of Sasuke, that fight is no contest, right? It's not even close, and not fair. But at the same time, if you want to talk about categorically Lee versus Sasuke, okay, well, you could have a debate about like Lee versus Sasuke in the Chunin exams, or like the Lee that goes up against Kidomaru versus the Sasuke that goes up against Naruto, you know, like Curse Mark Sasuke or whatever, right? Those could be more interesting matchups. And so, really, it's just kind of like house rules, right? You start off before the debate establishing which characters you want to use under which constraints, and then it's your goal to see, like, okay, can I actually argue successfully under these constraints, as opposed to saying, like, this is objectively true or whatever. Although you should try to be accurate and faithful with what you're, or like in good faith with what you're saying. Anyway, hopefully that makes some sense. Let's see. Sorry says, honestly, oh yeah, I read that, okay. Tsunade beats Prime Sakura, arguably even Hinata does. I don't know about that. I don't know if I'm gonna jump on board with that right out of the gate, but I'll be happy to hear the argument. Excuse me. Saria says, I mean, there's a character in Xenoblade who moves at the speed of light, and it's just because they want to show Rex is fast and strong. Not much more to it. Yeah, that's fine. If that's the way they want to represent their world, that's totally fine. If we were to power scale it, we would just need to look at it in context and see how it works. Maybe it's not something that's that consistent. And then Kario says, Ryomen Sukuna versus Muzan Kibutsuchi makes more sense if you really want to do power scaling. Moving at least speed, or did you mean at light speed, is not possible for any living being. According to physics, their body would disintegrate into photons. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm still catching up on JJK, so I can't comment on that matchup specifically. But yeah, I feel like I bring this up every video. But there's a great video if you haven't seen it yet. I think the name of it is one second. It's like Randall Munro. Can't spell. What if slight speed baseball? Right. So it's this video here. What if you threw a baseball at nearly light speed? And he kind of explains that, like, even if you threw it at 0.9 c, so 90% the speed of light, throwing a baseball would basically cause like a massive nuclear explosion. Not even the baseball hitting something. It would just like start to have a nuclear reaction based on the amount of energy generated from the friction between the molecules and atoms of the baseball and the air around it, and would just like cause a devastating, like a catastrophic event. So watch this video if you want to learn more about that. I've learned a lot from this, and the channel itself I think is great. This is the guy who used to write, maybe still does, XKCD, if you're familiar with that webcomic as well. God, the era of webcomics I think is kind of over, isn't it? I guess. I think that's kind of a thing of the past, huh? Let's see. Oh, hey, Cloud Axel, how's it going? Good to see you. Hope you are doing well. Hope you're having a good holiday and having some good restful vacation time. Cloud Axel says Lee can slow down time. I mean, maybe there is some argument for that, but I think it's like, I think if we really want to try to get like physicsy about it, we could probably just use, I'm not going to remember what chapter it's in, unfortunately, I don't think, but like, do you guys remember after the Danzo fight, where, is it like 485 or something? Yeah, or maybe I did remember it. When Naruto and Sasuke, like, clash, and then I actually guessed it right, holy shit, okay. So Naruto and Sasuke clash, and then they go into this space, and they're clearly having an exchange, and they're having a long ass conversation, and they're going back and forth and back and forth. Okay, I guess it's not that long, but you know, it's a few sentences. It might be a minute. Does that mean that they are literally on the outside standing there for an entire minute, and like Kakashi and all of them are watching them just stand there like assholes? Or is there something else happening? Because it seems like they managed to have that whole conversation before the explosion finished pushing their physical bodies away, which means that like the mental process, like, again, like, this is missing the point, of course, but like if you really wanted to try to calculate, you could be like, well, their mental processing and thought exchange speed must be faster than the kinetic like shockwave from this explosion, so maybe they're actually transferring thoughts at the speed of light. Or you could take the more metaphorical approach and be like, it's not like they're literally having this conversation, right? They don't literally actually go to a mystical realm that full of white light where they're just standing around in like the Matrix loading room and they're actually literally talking to each other. It's that they have these internal emotions and feelings, and when they look at each other and when they fight, like, these feelings are getting woven into their combat, and they implicitly understand it. So Naruto, when he looks at Sasuke, he quote unquote sees this conversation happening, and Sasuke, when he looks at him, also quote unquote sees the same thing happening. But it's not like a literal event that happens. This is just like their internal feelings and internal dialogue being translated to us for the readers, because we can't literally see things from their perspective. Personally, like, as much as that's not going to win a debate, I much prefer that interpretation, like the more abstract artistic interpretation, as opposed to just being like, yeah, but like calc it, calc it, bitch, get in BC. Like, I'm not really like gonna die on that hill. Um, Muzan beats Sukuna. I can't really comment on that, unfortunately. Hinata skills to base Naruto from the last in speed. You can make an argument about that. Oh yeah. Well, that would be something I could look at. Of course, I don't know how consistent the last is with like end of series scaling. I have to go back and rewatch it. I feel like the characters in that movie have kind of weird scaling anyway. Hinata has Duran Egg. Oh yeah, that's a good point. Like, I do think like Gentle Fist has significant advantages as well. So if it was just like them in a one-on-one, I think as ba- so based on that, right? Like, if you think Tonari is even vaguely like Otsutsuki level, and uh meaning like vaguely esoterically in the realm of a Kaguya or a Momoshiki, then yeah, Hinata can clearly like perceive and react to his movements, but he does also like fuck her up like multiple times, right? So I like, she's not a rival to him. He defeats her handily like multiple times, if I remember correctly. So I think you have a potential win con, but I think you're gonna that she's the underdog for sure. You're gonna have to like have a bit of an uphill battle to actually prove that. Um, Kario asks if I read Berserk. Yes, yes, yes. I love Berserk. So I'm a huge fan of the Dark Souls series. I have some Dark Souls 2 videos on my channel under the live section. I have played all the games that, like, modern games that From Software has put out, and I'd be happy to talk at great length about them. And as you might know, if you're familiar with the series, the director Hidetaka Miyazaki was deeply inspired by Berserk, so I got into Berserk as a result of my passion for FromSoft games. It's probably my favorite manga. There's some stuff that I find maybe if it was like debatably necessary, so to speak, it does get very excessive sometimes. And there's certain things that I really like, absolutely hate. I can't stand Chestnut Puck. I know it's like the most cliche like elitist thing ever, but I can't stand the fourth wall breaking and all those puns and shit like that. But overall, as a piece of artwork, it is fucking incredible. And especially, like, I know Kishimoto didn't have the benefit of taking all the hiatuses that Miura did, but especially once you get to like certain parts of the war arc, like the quality of the line work, the quality of character design overall just winds up like going downhill. If you compare like this to one of the panels from late Berserk, like during the Anishka arc, the level of detail of like intricacy, the I don't know, the attention to craft and the line work, like even like I just picked a random chapter, right? There's so much expressiveness, there's so much weight, there's so much like grit and contour, and just like every single fucking panel, every panel is just a work of art in and of itself. Like, look at this. I can't find a shitty looking panel if I tried. I guess like Griffith's head over here looks kind of weird or whatever, but you know, I don't know. I understand that Miura was probably working under exceptional circumstances, but still, um, his shit is just like on another level. And the weird thing is too is like I was recently reading Chainsaw Man, and I remember finding the first few chapters of Chainsaw Man to have some genuinely like very beautiful, intricate work. This is obviously a much more simple and stark art style, but there were some monster designs early on. Like, okay, obviously, like, this is much more minimalistic. It's a completely different style. Very, very simple, right? But then you have moments like this that have a lot more intricacy and care and detail. And the contrast of those styles is very compelling in and of itself. And then there's like some designs of demons. I don't know if I'll be able to find it right away, or devils rather. But like stuff like this, even though there's less individual lines, right? They still have an incredibly like compelling sense of visual style. But then you jump ahead to like chapter 30 or 40, I think is as far as I've gotten. and then things are like they fall off pretty quickly. Um, and you can kind of start to tell like right around the time where the author is like clearly being overworked and clearly like running out of time. Like you can even see here like Reza's like the detail in her eyes and face and stuff is just like falling behind. Things start to look like sketches. There's less background detail, right? So one way or another, Miura managed to maintain like even the background characters just look like sketches. One way or another, Miura managed to which is not to say that this isn't beautiful. It still is. I think moments like these are incredible. But Miura somehow managed to maintain that exquisite, like extreme level of visual fidelity throughout his career. But I've seen like so many shonen authors unfortunately not be able to do that, and it's like it's almost sad when it happens because like they want to sorry if these are Chainsaw Man spoilers, by the way. I should have probably mentioned that. I'll go back to Naruto stuff, but yeah, basically you know that the authors like want it to be as good as it can, and then there's just like time and resource constraints and stuff that prevent that from happening, and it's sad, but it's the reality, unfortunately. Anyway, so I went off on a tangent there, but yeah, fucking love Berserk. I am more than happy to talk about it like all day. We should do a Berserk stream at some point, honestly. Like I'd love to talk about the series and just go through some of my favorite moments and all that. Jumping ahead a little bit, Kario, my the site that I'm getting this from is Weeb Central. It's just weebcentral.com. This used to be, I think it was Manga C123, but they rebranded and they have like a whole bunch of stuff here for free. A lot of good quality stuff. And thankfully, unlike some of the other sites, there's not like constant like porno and like hentai banners and ads everywhere. So yeah, like hentai jump scares. So I think this will probably be a good resource. Consider donating as well if you or actually I don't think they have a donation page, but they have like a sponsored link somewhere where I forget where it is, but they used to have like a page where you could buy like merch and they get like a small commission. So consider supporting them if you do wind up. Is this really in the name of a fucking series? Hot series, Blue Lock Chainsaw Man, backstabbed in a backwater dungeon. My party tried to kill me, but thanks to an infinite gacha, I got level 9999 friends, and I am out for revenge. Like, it's just the appraiser taken in by a meritocratic empire, from a slave in my homeland to a hero in the enemy nation, banished to a frontier for my useless earth magic. Now I'm developing my territory aggressively. We're definitely in a new meta era with the I thought like that time I became a slime, or like, so what if I'm a like highly fuckable spider? So whatever the that thing is called. I thought that was like the peak, but apparently this is just getting started. Curio then says, or said before that, the Dark Seinen have special detailing for every panel. Yes, it really is a thing of beauty. I think I'm remembering this from a long time ago. Does this manga actually exist, or did I hallucinate it? Red Eyes? Yeah. I had good memories of this as well. Man, I haven't read this in fucking ages, but this was another one I want to go back and read as well. Just the detail and intensity. Obviously, there's not quite as much like intricacy in the backgrounds and stuff like that. But like, look at some of these panels, and like look at the design of the weapons and the mechs and everything. I remember there being some great artwork in Gantz as well, along a similar style. But yeah. Let's see. Kario then said, oh, before that you said the anime skipped many contents from the manga in the 2016. Oh my god, yeah, the 2016 CGI thing was an abomination. I don't know what the fuck happened there. I don't know if you've seen what's his name? Is it Super Eye Patch Wolf who did a video on that? I would recommend checking this out. So Super Eye Patch Wolf Berserk 2016. I think he had like 2 videos. Yeah, so this one over here, what the hell happened? And then Berserk 2017 is still terrible. Those are both good, like cathartic watches. Anyway, oh, this is interesting. I have to look into this. But this video too, why you should still read Berserk. This was a great one. Big, like, highly passionate love letter to the series. Really like this guy, Super Eye Patch Wolf. He also has a series called like My Favorite Things This Season, that he does a few times a year, where he just like recommends games and anime and stuff. I would highly recommend checking him out. But yeah, let's see. Saria says, watching Carrie and pausing to take care of my notes, and the more I think about it, this Carrie would absolutely destroy Pennywise. She's literally the antithesis of everything it needs to feed. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like her story was one of like self-actualization via reaching a breaking point. So I feel like she probably would have an edge on Pennywise in that regard, yeah. And especially with all the different powers she has, I mean, obviously Pennywise probably has like superhuman strength, like he just like can rip people's arms, like limbs off and stuff like that. But at the same time, like he relies on fear to kind of get them to reduce their guards and trap them. Whereas Carrie, you said she had like psychokinesis and geokinesis and like all kinds of stuff like that, right? So in a brawl, I don't think Pennywise is like a fighter, right? He just he's like a rabid animal that can also use genjutsu essentially. So like he's like a bear, right? He's a bear with genjutsu, and I think Carrie could probably deal with that personally. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed your statement from before, Kario, as well, where you said that conversation was just their imagination that happens during their clash. A person can imagine like 1 minute of conversation within a few seconds. Yeah, that makes sense too. And I think that we're just kind of being shown that in a abstract way as readers because we can't literally enter their minds. That's as close as we can get. The anime skipped many contents from the manga. Yeah, that's I do think that overall the original 1997 anime is a really good rendition, and the Golden Age arc movies are pretty good too. But I still have not found like I was really hoping that the game Berserk and the Band of the Hawk would be a good representation, just to be able to like show friends who don't necessarily want to commit to reading the whole manga. But it wound up being a bit disappointing as well. So I don't know. Maybe in a few years they'll give somebody else the IP and they'll restart it. I'd love to see the series rebooted and just like made into a, an actual like given the actual clout it deserves and the resources and time and love that it deserves, and given an actual animated adaptation. Okay, well, thank you again for the conversation. I saw the Doomsday trailer. Interesting. Are you excited about it? Seems like you might be. Oh, sorry. You said the seinen authors take their time and also sometimes pause the manga, unlike the shonen, where they have to publish one chapter every week. Yeah, I think Super Eyebatch Wolf also had a video about the rise and fall of Naruto, and he has another one on the rise and fall of Bleach, and he kind of describes that. Like, when Kishimoto was getting together his initial pitch for the series, like, he worked on it for weeks, if not months, and like he had so much time to work on iterating on it, on polishing on it, and like getting it to a place where it was really ready to go. And then he was just expected to churn it out and churn it out and churn it out, right? So yeah. Kario said Berserk never got the right hands. Yeah, it got into the right hands like Madhouse. Yeah, I agree with that. That's a shame. But I mean, there's still hope. Series tend to, I think, in a way, like it's been long enough that hopefully, we will be entering the nostalgia phase where people will be willing to kind of revisit it and give it another shot. Okay, so I think I'm just going to go ahead and get started here. I have some time codes. I'm going to jump around a little bit, and let's just see what we can learn from this debate. So again, SwagKage versus AfroSenju, Sakura versus Madara, and Six and Kabuki are there as well. 2v2. Let's go ahead and just start from, I think, where's the initial like opening statements? And just here they're positioned in context. So I think it's like around the 16-minute mark. So let's just start from here.
Okay. that's so crazy to me. All right.
Okay. Well, yeah. Let me go back a little bit.
What do you think, Six?
Or actually, yeah. 1609. Okay. Yeah. Let's do it from here.
They can go first, man. They can go first. I want to hear this.
Oh, you want us to go first?
Yeah.
So there's
Well,
6.
how would it work? Like, who would be the first person speaking for you? I guess.
Oh, Karia says, "Oh yeah, the Hellsing Ultimate art style and animation would suit the Berserk anime." Yeah, I think that studio would do a good job. Honestly, I'd be. Is that Madhouse actually? Because yeah, they would definitely, I think, do a good job. Sorry, says I want to get excited, but part of me is like they're going to bench all the women and Sam Wilson because of the advertising has been. Oh, Steve is back. Yeah. Oh, RDJ Doctor Doom. Oh, that's okay. That's interesting. Okay. I'll remain cautiously optimistic, but yeah, I can understand your skepticism there. But yeah, let's continue.
Yes. Are y'all gonna like tag team it, or I mean, I'll just go off the flow if just do it how y'all want to do it.
Yeah, I guess we can all just talk. So, Six, do you want to begin or do you want me to lay out the premise?
Because I think I definitely need to hear this.
I mean, I feel
first
like
before I really go on it.
I feel like the premise has been laid out where we're just trying to prove that it's more likely Sakura would beat up Madara in a fight than the other way around.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is something that Swag elaborates on later, but they're not. Swag doesn't tend to take the approach that this is like an objective truth or something like that, but more just sort of argues like what is more likely as opposed to being like this is objectively what's going to happen. Kario says Madhouse is actually famous for Hellsing Ultimate. Didn't you know about it? I definitely have heard the name before. I'm just really bad at like like I've heard about other animation studios like Trigger and Mappa and Production IG are a few that come to mind. I'm just bad at like keeping in my head like which studio, like Studio Pierrot or whatever. I'm bad at remembering which studio works on which thing. Because I'm more of a manga fan than like I do love anime, but I always fucking forget the names of the studios, unfortunately. But yeah, and then like Gainax and those are those are the only ones I can rattle off the top of my head, unfortunately. But yeah, I knew the name, but I didn't remember for sure like what series they had done. I don't even know. I know Funimation is like the publisher, right, of the Dragon Ball anime, but who actually animated it? Do you know? I just realized that I don't know that, and that feels really weird to not know. Yeah. So let's continue.
Yeah. So yeah, but that's like opening statement is I guess we kind of already established most of what I'm gonna say here, but if like Doctor Strange made a mistake and somehow Sakura got dropped and like switched places with Hashirama, and she was taken out of Boruto, and then she had to kill Madara there in the final valley, and he had the 9 tails and everything. Yeah, she would probably be able to do it, and I would go so far as to say if Madara pulled like a Cell on her and just stood there, no matter what defensive measures he took, if she walked up to him and punched his perfect Susanoo, it would just explode and he would die.
Yeah, so I think the core of the argument again is going to be that ultimately it's a clash of chakra on chakra, and as long as Swag and Six can establish that Sakura just has so much vastly more chakra than Madara does, then they're going to be able to demonstrate that like when that clash occurs, Sakura is just going to win. Like there's nothing that Madara can do. Afro and Kabuki are going to, well, Afro more specifically is going to argue more from the perspective of that strength and stuff has to be executed in a tactically like wise way, because if it can't be harnessed, then it's irrelevant. And Team Swag, so to Swag and Six, on the other hand, are more going to be like arguing pretty much the exact opposite. They're going to be arguing that no amount of experience and skill and practice is going to matter if Sakura is just like blindingly faster and massively stronger than Madara is. So it's going to come down to those basic core arguments. Have I ever seen Ianu? I have not. Sorry. What is Ianu about? I'd be curious to know. So yeah, we'll do like another minute of intro just to establish the premise, and then I think basically like they're going to talk about the scaling of Sage's 6 path clones and stuff like that. And so let's let them do that, and then we'll start jumping around to specific moments.
Okay, what makes you think that the perfect Susanoo would have to be used at all for that fight?
Oh, well, I didn't say it would have to be used.
I don't think it gets to that point.
Yeah.
I think he just dies before it. But if you wanted to talk about the perfect Susanoo, Madara's perfect Susanoo should be weaker than the 10 tails, considering he's looking for the 10 tails power in order to cast Infinite Tsukuyomi, obviously.
So I do think that that's something that I sort of disagree with Six about, and at the same time, like I can definitely understand where he's coming from. That like Madara's motivation is to get the 10 tails to be able to use it to power the Infinite Tsukuyomi. If he could just use the power of like his own power, like he had enough chakra to be able to power the Infinite Tsukuyomi himself, he would have just done that instead of gathering all the tailed beasts. But he needs to gather the tailed beasts to do it in the first place, which means that like it's the Ten Tails would be stronger than him, in other words. But I think that might be like an asymmetrical scaling. In other words, yes, like if he wants to take over the world, gathering all the tailed beasts and making sure that they are contained and that their power is being channeled and like controlled by him for this particular jutsu is to his advantage. And it might be the case that, like, pound for pound, the Ten Tails has more chakra than he himself does. Maybe there's an argument to support that, especially if it's like full on Kurama as part of it, you know, or whatever. Like the full complete Ten Tails. Sure, I think that's probably reasonable, especially since the Ten Tails. I mean, obviously this gets retconned a bit in Boruto, but the Ten Tails is essentially like Kaguya plus the God Tree. So you know, it's weird, but I think that kind of makes sense. But if the implication is that like Madara is overall weaker in combat and would lose a fight against the Ten Tails, I think that would be a little bit much of an assumption, right? Like actually looking at all of the things that Madara can do and the way that he would fight, I think he could still pack up the Ten Tails potentially using a variety of different jutsu. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the Ten Tails is stronger, but I think that what Six is trying to do is just establish that the Six Tails has a stronger, like a much vaster chakra amount, like latent chakra amount, and then Sakura is eventually going to be scaled to be stronger than that, and then that would put Sakura over Madara. So I get where he's coming from, but I think that there is a bit more nuance here. Granted, that's kind of not the point of the conversation, but yeah, I think sometimes it's just like it can be tempting or difficult to like the double edge of the double-edged sword here is that you can wind up rolling in like inaccuracies about other things if you're not careful about like how you're making your points. So just a minor piece of feedback there. Saria says it's hard to explain, but it's so good and the animation is beautiful. Oh, cool. I will write that down. I will put down a sticky note to check it out. One sec. Right near my things to check out in Clair Obscure. Note, so let's say Iyanu. Okay, I will check it out. Thank you very much. Ryoman says Daemon over Ishiki. I don't know, because I think the idea is that Daemon can, like, any hostile intent that he perceives from another person immediately gets reflected. So if that's true, and if that applies to anything Ishiki can do to him, then sure. But I don't know if, like, Ishiki could potentially get around it with some kind of a hack or whatever. And if they were just like to go up against each other in a fist fight, I don't know about that, right? But that's kind of what makes Naruto fights more interesting. If they were all basically just like boxers or whatever, it wouldn't be as interesting. It's the asymmetricality between the different ability sets and techniques and tactics and stuff that makes the fights really compelling.
Actually would imply that he can't bring a power like that on his own to the table.
But just to give you a heads up, you're going to hear some like AI text-to-speech stuff. That's because during the debate, Swag had a text-to-speech, like a software or whatever that was reading out donations. So if you hear that robot voice, that's just baked into the video. Unfortunately, I can't turn it off. So.
Zero donated $1.
This is also supported by the fact that he says it rivals the tailed beasts, and the Ten Tails is a fusion of all of the tailed beasts.
Yeah, that's a decent point. I think if you actually look at what Madara manages to pull off in, like, you know, the feat where he cuts down the mountains with his sword, with like one swipe of his sword, and that's just like the shockwave that gets sent out from the sword from the perfect Susanoo, right? You compare that to like Ten Tails Biju bombs. I mean, obviously the Biju bomb is blowing up a much larger radius and has a much larger area of effect, and probably there's more energy behind it. But like if Madara manages to navigate himself up to the Ten Tails and stab him in the eye with his sword, like there could be a win condition there, right? Like he might still have enough power to chop off the Ten Tails limbs and disassemble him, even if he's not like performing quite as impressive DC feats with like casual sword swings or whatever. Oh cool, thank you very much. I appreciate you sending me the GIF. Sorry, I'm not going to pronounce it so as not to stir up trouble. But yeah, thank you.
Okay. So what is Sakura's feat that you're saying that she has to beat him in this fight? That's what I want to know.
Well, so first of all, can we agree that the amount of chakra that you have should be analogous to like how strong you are or how hard your attacks are gonna hit?
It definitely depends, because if we're talking
Bad
about the chakra
Riddler
that she gets
donated
from the little, I don't know the exact
$2.99
name,
through
but
Super
like
Chat.
the technique that Sanade taught her, that's relative off of like what she stored over the years that she had it, right? And there's still
So that is something that I want to research more. I understand that like, so Sakura obviously like gets a massive power up when she completes her Byakugo, like the diamond on her forehead seal, and enters that like state. Then Swag, I think in a minute, is gonna mention that he thinks that like by the time she gets to Boruto, she has stored up like 20 years of Byakugo chakra. I don't think it works like that. I think over the course of a long time, you slowly siphon off chakra and store it into the seal, and then the seal manifests itself. That seal is not necessarily going to keep increasing indefinitely in size, right? Or in magnitude. It becomes alive and becomes a thing once it has fully charged, and then it just kind of sits there waiting to be used. Is how I think it works. Now, it's quite possible, maybe even quite likely, that Boruto era Sakura can still store more chakra in her Byakugo overall than she did the very first fucking time that she used it in the war. Like, the idea that she gets better at that, I think, is probably an implicitly safe assumption. But still, I think, that doesn't necessarily mean that she's like constantly siphoning chakra into it after it's full, and that she basically, if she just like kind of hung out meditating for her whole life and got to like age 80 or something, and then managed to like punch somebody with that 80-year-old, or like she'd been meditating for 60 years, that she would have 60 years worth of chakra concentrated into that punch. I don't know that it like has I think it has an upper ceiling that's defined by your proficiency with it at the given time, and not that it just like constantly gets stronger and stronger and stronger, right? But let's continue.
a limit to that, and there's a limit to what it can heal as well too.
Wait, what limit?
Yeah, that wasn't the question. The question is, do you think that more chakra would equate to more power if put into a strike? If not, we can like provide you evidence as to why that is the case.
I mean, for Sakura, yeah, because that's how she fights.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's really good that 6 is already like offering to provide scans and not just going off of conjecture or whatever. I understand that, especially like 4 years ago, the rules weren't necessarily as rigid, but 6 has always had a reputation for having a deep knowledge of the subject, and at the very least, like being ready and willing to provide evidence and like to go out of his way to supply evidence, even for people where he's not like actively debating, right? Like he was present for the Swag versus Noodles debate, I think for both of them, and he was just like there volunteering scans and stuff and helping out. So, kudos for that, and knowing where things are, knowing where to reach for info and data, that's very helpful.
So then you know that Sakura has more chakra than a 6-pass Sage Mode Naruto clone then.
Okay, so I see the reach. Okay, go on.
This is not a reach at all.
It's not, when I say reach, it's more so I'm seeing the angle that you're coming to attack this at. But go on. I want you to finish that full point out before I don't want to cut you off in the
she
middle.
has more chakra than a 6-pass Sage Mode Naruto clone.
Yeah, I can get the
Those
scan.
clones
Xcraft
can
donated
swap
$5
hands with
through Super
Madara's
Chat.
Limbo clones,
Bra Afro's
and
reputation
even
in
with
debating
that,
ended
they
with,
have the
but
GB
where's the
cloak
light?
one, so they should be stronger than base 6-pass Sage Mode Naruto,
Okay.
who can beat up Jubijin Madara before the God Tree.
Yeah.
Who, like we established earlier, is just
Yo,
stronger than EMS
where you
Madara.
getting this from, though?
Okay, so I think to recap that, it's a little hard to hear everything underneath the whatchamacallit, the text-to-speech stuff. But to recap that, basically there's this statement here in 680, is it 683, I think actually is what 6 says. So during the Kaguya fight, this chapter 683, they are talking about how to get Sasuke out of the dimension that he's been taken to by Kaguya, right? And Obito notices that it's a time-space ninjutsu, or space-time ninjutsu from a time-space, and that he should be able to enter it, but it's going to take him a shitload of chakra. And so this is Naruto's clone. It's a little confusing, but this is Naruto's clone who's running around with them, and he's having a conversation, and Obito says, I'll need an enormous amount of chakra to do it since it's not my time space. If my chakra runs out while I'm in there, I'm done for. Then the clone says, then I'll go with you. My real body won't go down that quickly. I'm strong. Your doppelganger chakra isn't enough. And then Sakura says, would it still be inadequate with my 100 healings chakra? Okay, so I think what is happening here is that Naruto's offering to give the clone's chakra to Obito, and then Obito would be able to use that chakra to power the jutsu. He says that it's not going to be enough, but Sakura says that she would have enough to give him, so she has more chakra than him. And then the argument that Swag and Six make, hopefully I'm representing it correctly, is that since the clones of Naruto are equal in combat efficacy overall to his main body, that means that it should have the same striking strength, the same jutsu strength, etc. So then Sakura scales to Naruto's clone, and Naruto's clone scales to himself, and therefore Sakura scales to Naruto, and Naruto scales to a much stronger version of Madara as well as to Kaguya, so Sakura would scale to that weaker version of Madara, aka EMS Madara. And there's a certain kind of logic to it. But remember, I know there's some contention about this, but generally the way that people understand chakra distribution to work is that when somebody makes a shadow clone, the number of shadow clones that are made determines how much chakra goes into them, right? So if Naruto is at full chakra, this might not be 100% true, right? I know that there is some counter evidence to this that it's a bit disputed, but the way that it's initially taught to us how the shadow clones work is that if Naruto is just hanging out and he makes one shadow clone, so now there's his physical body and a second shadow clone, 50% of his chakra has gone into the shadow clone, and then the remaining 50% of his chakra he keeps. If he makes 4 clones, or makes 3 clones, so there's 4 total bodies, each of the 3 clones and also his main body will have 25% of his chakra. So his chakra is always divided evenly every time he makes a shadow clone, right? So if he starts in base and he makes 1 clone, then he takes 50% of his chakra and gives it to the clone. If that clone gets destroyed and Naruto doesn't get the chakra back, he makes another clone. Well, he's starting from 50% of full now, so the clone that he makes after that will only have 25% of his original chakra pool left, because he's already reduced it by 50% the first time. Now, obviously, that sounds very inefficient, and it sounds like that would be kind of like a huge disadvantage. And I think that there's some arguments later that Naruto figures out how to put arbitrary amounts of chakra into the clones. So maybe that is up for dispute. But as it stands now, it looks like Naruto, obviously has 1 clone over here, which means that 50% of his chakra went into that clone. He's coming into that battle directly from after fighting Madara, right? The fight against Madara goes right into the fight against Kaguya, and during this fight, he also created multiple shadow clones to fight against Madara and his limbo. So Naruto has been creating clones over and over and over again over the course of this fight, right? And now he's doing it again. And so it's just one of these clones has a fraction of the full amount of chakra that Naruto has. So here, sure, Naruto is fighting against Madara. He's capable of reacting to him. He's capable of damaging him. But then, after showing these reaction and relativity damage feats, he makes 4 clones. Each of these have 20% of his chakra. So now Naruto, in his base form, or Naruto's main body, should be down to 20% of his max chakra, if the rules apply. Then when he makes another shadow clone against Kaguya, he's actually down to 10% of his max chakra. And then maybe you could argue he gets some back from Kokuo or whatever, right? It's probably a little bit more complicated because of all the Biju in him. But the point is that I don't think that what I said is 100% ironclad by any means, but I do think that it's a bit much if the argument is to go from well, Sakura has more chakra than the clone and the clone scales to Naruto. I don't think that is safe to assume because of how many times the chakra gets divided up. Yes, it's true that the clones themselves can demonstrate relativity in some regard to the original. And yes, it's true that Naruto still obviously has a bajillion fuck tons of chakra left because he does this a moment later. So he's not like at low chakra, but still, I think there is room to dispute whether or not like that chakra, like how much of a feat it is for that doppelganger's chakra to be superseded by Sakura, because how much does it have really, right? And that would have been an opportunity. Like maybe Swag and Six are correct. Like maybe their perspective is correct there. But I think if like Afro and Kabuki had been more adept at debating, I think that they could have driven home on that point harder, and they could have been like, okay, well, let's actually break down how the clones work, and let's talk about the mechanics of it, and let's try to figure out the sequence. And if you look at that, there's room there to kind of dispute the original premise, right? So that's all I'll say about that for now.
Like, how
No,
you
no,
just
no,
gonna
hold
say
on,
that?
hold on, hold
No,
on,
no, I'm
hold
just
on.
gonna say, how you gonna just say that?
Getting
though?
what from? Getting
Like,
what?
why does Sakura have this more chakra than his clones?
Okay, so it's
Yeah,
actually
you
like
said it.
really blatant. Like you don't have to. I can find the scan for you. Six. What volume is it in? What chapter? But it's
It's like 683.
okay.
Yeah, so again, props to Six for knowing where it is, being prepared for that. Like this is the so this is the thing also. I just reread like earlier today, I reread chapters like 660 through 690, and I couldn't find, and I also reread like the Scarlet Spring chapters. I couldn't find any other references, like at least in my searching, to Sakura being stated by anybody to have more chakra than Naruto, or more chakra than the clone, right? And so I think, you know, it's tenuous, right? But this is the only piece of evidence that I could personally find from, as Six said, chapter 683, which is why I'm like a little iffy on, or which is why I think that this is what he's talking about, and why I was kind of basing my initial claim based on that. But remember, going back to like, what was it, 660 or 675? No, it's a little further along, sorry. So they're going to talk about how Madara's limbo clones scale to him. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that necessarily. But his limbo clones scale to him, and then Naruto's clones are able to fight the limbo clones. But remember, like, it's Naruto and Sasuke fighting the limbo clones at the same time. I went too far, didn't I? And Naruto, when he makes these limbo clones to fight against Madara, he does so, like, obviously earlier in the fight, like before they get to the Sakura fight. So he should have more chakra now than he does during the Kaguya fight. He makes the limbo clones, and he fights alongside Sasuke against the clones. And so, yeah, these particular clones are relative to Madara's limbo clones, but these clones may have more chakra in them if that, like, chakra division rule still applies, right? So, again, Six might be totally right, but, like, there's room for this to be contested within a debate context for sure. I think that was, like, a missed opportunity from Afro and Kabuki.
Okay.
We can break that down like in a second.
Yeah.
So you're saying because she has this much chakra and she can go hand to hand, well, relatively going from the clone go hand to hand with the limbo clone, and saying that she's stronger than that. You're just going off of describing how strong she is. Right?
Well, it sort of, yeah. Like the fact that she has that much chakra at that point, which admittedly is like really weird, but the fact that she has that much chakra at that point should put her like well above the striking strength necessary to kill Madara.
Yeah, so here's another thing. I wish I could remember who was making this argument. I want to say it was Troy, simply Troy, I think, who made the argument that since 8th Gate Guy, it was in a debate. I think it was Troy versus Noodles. I think it was the one that happened like 6 or 7 months ago. I can't remember though. But I think he said that since 8th Gate Guy can basically quote unquote fly, like not literally fly, but he can navigate through the air by kicking the air. And because like supposedly he's just doing that by like kicking the air really hard and really fast, by creating like these little pockets of air pressure, which I don't think that's how that works, but whatever, it's a comic book, right? That he's not necessarily using any particular special technique or whatever, he's just kicking. And the kicks are allowing him to ascend through the air. That as long as what's her name, Sarada in Boruto scales to him, which I think he argued she did. In other words, like Troy was saying that Boruto, like a 2 Blue Vortex era Sarada, was capable of outputting like 8th Gate guy levels of power. Therefore, she should be able to fly by just kicking the air. And I think Noodles challenged this correctly by saying like, well, does she actually have any feats of her doing anything like that? Maybe it wasn't Noodles. I honestly can't remember. But basically, like, I think the idea was that like Troy was saying anybody who can like strike as strong as 8th Gate guy should be able to do this, and the counter to it, whoever it was from, was like, just because in theory this might work in principle doesn't mean that they would actually be able to do it. You have to actually demonstrate that the character could manage to like wrangle this up, and it's just kind of an assumption that Guy isn't doing this as a special result of what he, like his own proclivities or abilities, right? It's just an assumption that he gets this ability automatically by going into the gates, and it's not something special that he's doing with his chakra control or something, right? So I kind of feel the same way about this, right? Just because a given character is capable of doing something in a certain context doesn't mean that that necessarily applies across the board. So when we're talking about, you know, the specific matchup, the specific interaction between this particular kind of clone and this other particular kind of clone, it's not always safe to assume that we can just apply that in a blanket sense to other clones of that same character under other circumstances, right? Again, I don't think that like Six and Swag are out of pocket or anything for taking this approach, but it's useful to kind of review this because in debates, stuff like this can happen where it's like everything seems like to intuitively line up, and so you start to build your argument based on it. But if your opponent challenges you and actually asks for you to demonstrate in context, like what is the actual model that demonstrates this working, then things can like spiral out of control pretty quickly.
Especially since she uses chakra to amp her punch.
Yeah.
No, but okay, but so we do agree that if she hits Madara dies.
No, she's not one.
Why not?
What proof that Sakura can one shot kill any person of that caliber?
JAKA Robotics
That proof doesn't
Vibes
exist.
donated $1.99
She can
to
damage
Super
Kaguya.
Chat. Lol, don't
Kaguya
need
didn't
Super
die.
Chat.
So you don't
She
think
didn't lose
that
her
like
head.
you don't think that like if 8th Gate guy like kicked base Hashirama in the face, Hashirama would die?
Well, okay, I need you to explain the guy loop that we're going with.
Well, no,
Sakura
I'm
here.
just
Yeah, so that's a decent analogy, right? Like, I think later on in the debate, they also mentioned, like, so Afro is kind of expressing a general sense of skepticism, which is fine. It's perfectly reasonable and expected, I would say, to be skeptical towards stuff like this. I will say, obviously, if you have spent any amount of time debating, like, an argument from skepticism is just like a fallacy, right? Just saying, or an appeal to, I think it's called an appeal to incredulity. It's basically like saying, well, I don't find this compelling, therefore it's false. That would be a fallacy. That's not a counter to anything. Now, saying I personally as an individual am not convinced by that, therefore I'm going to pursue more knowledge on it, or I think that like this is inadequate, that is reasonable, and that is like something that should spur further discourse, but it's not a debunk. Being like, I think that that's bullshit in and of itself is not an argument. It's not evidence, obviously, right? So, Afro would need to kind of delve into that further. As long as Swag and Six have satisfied their burden of proof, as long as they have actually demonstrated with evidence the veracity of their claims, then the burden shifts to Afro and Kabuki to then contest that and demonstrate why that's false, essentially. I don't necessarily think that Swag and Afro have done that yet. So if I were in, Swag and Six, if I were in Afro's position, I would just sort of press harder. I would want to see the scans in context, and I would want to actually, well, I guess like we actually see them here. So Six did actually post a scan, so props for that, right? I want to see the scan in context. I want to see, like, read the whole chapter and get a sense of what's really going on in general, and then kind of go from there. But overall, totally understandable where they're coming from as of this point in the debate.
Saying that like if like it's possible for those characters to be one shot by people like around like the 6 paths level of power, right?
Yeah, and sorry, I kind of got off on a tangent, but like later in the debate, Swag also mentioned something along the lines of, what was it? That, like, he uses other analogies, like if so the fact that we never see, like Kaguya kill somebody as weak as like Kid Konohamaru in chapter 3 or whenever he first shows up, right? Doesn't mean that he wouldn't be able to do that. I think Kabuki gets caught up on the fact that, like, we never see Sakura do a feat as impressive as, at least as visually apparently oppressive in terms of a DC sense of, like, Madara cutting down those mountains. So he's like, well, you need to show me that Sakura has actually defeated somebody of this level, or show me a feat that she does that's on this level. Otherwise, there's no proof of it. And, like, you don't need to actually, and as Six astutely says at a certain point, you don't actually need to demonstrate the literal feat happening as long as you can build a case for why it is feasible and likely, and like, build a model for it, right? This is probably a bad analogy, but, like, you can't see a black hole by definition because it sucks in all the light around it, right? But you can come to a reasonable conclusion that black holes exist and develop a model for how they work based on the effect that they have on things around them. We come to conclusions based on, like, inference and deduction and gathering, like, supplementary evidence, even if a particular channel of understanding something is closed off to us. I'm sure, like, black holes have other ways of being detected. Like, I think they emit a certain kind of radiation that can be detected specifically, right? So obviously there's other like avenues to that analogy. But at the end of the day, like, that's the crux of it, right? Is it's not necessary to show a character literally doing something, which should be obvious because we're having a hypothetical debate. We're having, like, a completely invented or imagined matchup. But I think some people do still get caught up on that. Like, show me him doing this, otherwise I'm going to reject it. That's not really how that works.
The thing with Guy's ability and what we've seen is described to a high.
Although, yeah, I happen to see, they shouldn't be reading chat, which I don't think they are, but, like, just happened to notice one of the people in chat over here said, by the way, Naruto created 5,000 clones. One sec. Excuse me. Which divided his chakra between them and was fighting Kaguya also, right? So I don't think it was 5,000, and they kind of got the order of events slightly out of order. But yeah, people in chat are kind of picking up on some of the nuances of it, so to speak. Yeah, so Saria says, reminds me of the where's the light debate. I think somebody in chat in this also mentioned, like, in a super chat, said something about, like, where's the light? Was it right here? What are you referring to? I would like to check that out because I've heard people mention it, but I don't know what that's referring to. Are you talking about, like, the Kabuki and Afro versus Seth debate, where they were both like, show me the speed of light, let's see the speed of light, and they were talking about, like, the Minato versus the Raikage fight? Don't recall. But yeah, let's go ahead a little bit here.
Like, kicked base Hashirama in the face. Pad's level of power, right?
The thing with Guy's ability and what we've seen is described to a higher degree.
You think so? Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Argument in its own.
Yo, the thing
Benjamin
does
Mack
right
donated
is, like,
5.
Many different weapons with he.
Oh,
with
wait,
his
sorry.
using.
I wanted to get away from the super chat, but I should go back, actually.
Can we agree that Madara has better fighting experience than Sakura? Because he's fought in many wars, many different weapons with him using wars under a different type of stress than what Sakura fought in.
So this is an interesting point, and I think that it's actually a totally valid thing to discuss, right? And this is what we were talking about before. So Afro's perspective here is that all of this strength and speed and talent and skill or whatever in the world doesn't actually matter unless you can put that into use practically. And Sakura is kind of like, yeah, she has a pretty cool fight against Sasori, but that's kind of where she peaks in terms of, like, I'm inserting my own opinion here, but I think, like, that is her most intricate and most involved fight in the series. And in terms of actual like practical combat experience, most of what she does is support on the sidelines. So as opposed to Madara, who's somebody who has been fighting on the front lines since he was like a teenager, right? Who not only was trained as a shinobi, but also like was in a war and was on a battlefield fighting a war from when he was a kid until when he was an adult, like older than Sakura is, certainly in the war arc, maybe not as old as she is later in the series, and like in Boruto, but he must have had much more experience just on a daily basis fighting people in combat in dire life or death situations with a variety of different weapons, different tactical deployments and situations, etc. Now, this is not to discount Sakura's combat experience or her training or anything like that. Obviously, she is a fully fledged shinobi. She is like the right hand of the right, well, not exactly, but she's like approximately the right hand of the Hokage, right? She has a pretty prominent position. She's a protege of the Hokage and one of the Sannin, so it's not like she's a fucking nobody, right? She's one of the few people who was actually able to do something against fucking Kaguya. That's a feat. That counts. But at the same time, does that really actually mean that she scales here? Well, that's the question, right? And so, I think let me repeat what he said, because I know. Oh yeah. So in terms of experience, like, I think the overall perspective that that Afro and Kabuki take is, how is her lack of experience going to hold her back and prevent her from doing anything? But in one of the funnier parts of the debate, they bring up the idea that, like, okay, newborn baby Broly going up against Captain Ginyu, Broly is still probably going to kill Ginyu. Or, like Goten going up against, let's just put it this way, right? If you had like Kid Naruto, who had the powers of Kaguya, going up against, like Kakashi, right? Like the Kakashi who fought Zabuza, that Kakashi would have a lot more combat experience, a lot more strength, a lot more skills, more like beguiling jutsu. But even if Kid Naruto with very little combat experience, or let's say Kid Sasuke, right? Like, obviously less combat experience, obviously less prowess, less jutsu speciality. If you just all of a sudden gave him all of Kaguya's power, he'd still probably kick Kakashi's ass, right? Like, maybe there's an argument to be made that he get like stage fright and freeze up, and Kakashi would use like sneak in and get a Chidori off or something like that. It's possible, but it's also possible that despite his lack of combat experience, if he can move at the speed of light and he can like hit with multi-continental attacks, and Kakashi can only move at the speed of sound and can only hit with like small country level attacks, then at a certain point, all of that experience and skill and practice and everything just goes out the fucking window. So that's going to be the major point of contention in the debate. Asaria says, you don't know, Madara kind of lets himself get hit by stuff like getting stabbed in the arm by Sasuke or Tobirama. I think it's Sasuke. Yeah, he, when he's blind, he lets Sasuke stab him with the Kusanagi, and then he's like, I can feel the, like, Choku Tomoe pattern of your eyes, or whatever he says. And letting Guy get him, he's like aggressively arrogant. Yeah, that's true. And I do think that, like, going back to like the Pain fight and stuff, I do think that like arrogance is one of Pain's like major drawbacks as a character. He's haughty, he sees himself as superior, he sees himself as a god. Like, if he actually went into Konoha bloodlusted and stayed stealthy and like didn't lecture people and shit, he would have easily wiped out the whole village, right? Like, him standing around and pontificating and lecturing people, bothering to test Naruto and poke and prod him, instead of just like, I don't know, getting Naruto's like crucified, like chakra rod impaled body, throwing it in the chameleon, and then just like reverse summoning out of there. Like, there's no reason why he shouldn't have swept the whole village, right? It's his arrogance and his like self-doubt and his desire to like test other people that winds up being his downfall, as much as Naruto's strength and resolve and stuff like that. So a very good point. And that's another thing too, is like, if you're having a debate like this, to what extent are you letting the characters that you're talking about act out of character, right? Like, a lot of times people will say the only feats that we are going to consider would be in-character feats. So, for example, if it would be, the example I always like to use is like, so Pain could potentially juggle somebody in like out of the planet's gravity by just like pushing them up with a Shinra Tensei, and then as long as they don't fall back down to earth in time for the 5-second cooldown, they can just like keep pushing them up and up and up and eventually like get out of the Earth's atmosphere, and then they would just die in space, right? But that's not something that would necessarily occur to Pain, or not something that he would actually ever do. So I can't really use that in a debate because I'm like inventing a new way for the character to fight. It's physically possible for him to do that. There's nothing stopping him like physically, but that's still not in character, so it wouldn't be valid in a debate unless we allowed for that beforehand. However, we also like tend to say things like this character is going to be bloodlusted, right, and be going for the kill. And generally, when you listen to people debate about this stuff, they don't consider things like that. Like they almost write off all of the like character debuffs, I guess you could call it, or like the plot-induced character stupidity moments, I think is the term that Versus Battles Wiki uses. So it's this weird kind of contradiction where we want characters to be in character, but we need them to also be acting out of character for them to have the fight in the first place, right? There's no reason why, you know, I can't think of a good example, but like Naruto versus Killer Bee, right? If you wanted to like have that fight and they had a fight to the death, like there's no reason for them to fight to the death, right? You have to invent some kind of context for that. So
I guess he would have more of it, but she did live through a fight against like the Ten Tails and Madara and Obito, and then fought Kaguya. So I feel like that experience is like Sakura's experience is of higher quality than the Madara that we're talking about here.
I disagree, because in a lot of the references that you see, her place in the war is support.
Yeah, so these are actually really interesting points. Swag's perspective is that like the only person that really pushed Madara to his limits was Hashirama, and he fought against, well, at least once he got to a certain level of power, right? Like when he was a teenager, like probably random Senju members were threats to him, but as he got stronger and stronger, the only person who could keep up with him was Hashirama, and Hashirama was like the other strongest person in the world. So they kept pushing each other, and they were rivals, and they kept like honing each other, I guess you could say. And then because of that, the quality of Hashirama's, or like Madara's experience is not necessarily better than Sakura, because Sakura has had less individual battles, but she has fought in some capacity against more than just one super strong character, right? Like she fought against Kaguya, she fought against Madara, she fought against Jubito to a certain extent. She fought against the Ten Tails to a certain extent, right? And so because she has fought more strong opponents, then maybe you could argue that she's had fewer but more compelling sources of experience, right? Like she fought 4 high-level Elden Ring bosses, whereas Madara basically just fought the same guy in PvP over and over again. And now the two of them are going together and fighting, like, which one of them has more experience. Well, this dude, you know, Sakura soloed Millennia, but and also Godric, and also, I don't know, like, just list some other bosses, like the fucking Shadow of the Urchi bosses, Rilana or whatever. But on the other hand, you have the like Madara, who just kept fighting Let Me Solo her over and over and over again, sometimes losing, sometimes winning, right? Which one of those is like the better Elden Ring player? I don't know. They're like different skill sets. It's not apples to oranges. However, I will say, and I think that Afro mentions this as well, is that ultimately Sakura doesn't really do a whole lot in the fights. Like, compare what Sakura does against Kaguya to what the other characters do. She like helps Obito out off like out of the ring, so to speak, and then she gets one punch in. She doesn't really like fight her in a way that she's really analyzing her skills and like limit testing and like going back and forth and having an exchange. Same thing against Madara. What does she do? She runs in once and then she gets kicked back and stabbed through the gut and all that. Is it really fair to say that she fought Madara in a way that she's like gaining like tangible buildable combat experience, and that is comparable to what Madara's going through? I really don't think so. Same thing with the Ten Tails clones. Okay, like what did she do against the Ten Tails clones? She got her Byakugo powered up, and then she like smashed into the ground and made a giant crater. Okay, she didn't really do much after that. Like immediately after that, Sasuke and Naruto come in and save her. So yeah, she does some stuff, but like, what? Like, is she gaining even like a remotely comparable combat experience that's practical and applicable compared to like even Sasuke and Naruto going up against Zabuza for the first time? Like the shit that they went through with him, like Zabuza and then Haku as well later, but even the first time with the water prison and all that, they were more directly involved with that fight in a way that is like more intimate, so to speak, and where they're getting an opportunity to actually learn more things and test their limits and like test their reflexes and like their resolve and all that stuff. Sakura is not doing that. So I really like the principle that Swag brings up here. I think it's very interesting, but I don't think his argument actually holds water, because it's like you can't really quantify that stuff. Even if you could, Sakura is just not fighting with that same level of personal involvement in the battles that he's referencing as fucking Madara was, right? So Saria says, also for experience, I think a good example would be Goku matching Beerus in skill, but Beerus is who knows how old, or when he pressed Roshi in the 22nd tournament, or maybe the 21st. Yeah, I think I'll see if I can find the time code, but I think Swag specifically mentioned something along the lines of Goten. Goten would probably beat Ginyu or Tao Pai Pai in a fight, right? Like there's no contest, because he's just massively faster and massively stronger. And Tao Pai Pai has been an assassin for however many decades. And Captain Ginyu, I don't even know how old he is, but he's the leader of an elite like assassination mercenary squad or whatever. So obviously he has way more experience than Kid Goten does. But even though Goten, essentially even like just being incarnated for the first time as part of their first fusion, they would still be able to wipe the floor with like Tao Pai Pai and fucking, what the hell is his name? I just said it. Captain Ginyu, like the whole Ginyu force, like even fucking base form Frieza, right? Like, and probably higher forms too. They would just fucking annihilate them, because the power differential is so much more massive. I mean, I guess you could argue that like tactically speaking, if Captain Ginyu managed to like play on, like, because like Goten in character, again, like to go back to the character stupidity debuffs or whatever, like Goten is a child and he will get distracted and he will like fuck around and run out of time if he doesn't like pay attention. So yeah, there is a counter argument there, and the counter argument is that like with some character nuance and some psychology, that Ginyu just like stalls for time. But if and then manages to win when he depowers. But if like Ginyu has to fight Goten, they have to clash. There's no fucking contest, right? There's no way he gets out of that alive. Same thing with Tao Pai Pai, because the power differential is just like so massively vast between them, and that's kind of how I feel about like Kakazu versus Pain as well. Like Nagato is way younger than Kakazu. He's been on Earth for way less time. Kakazu probably has like a higher body count. I mean, I don't know if we can quantify that for sure, but like he has been a bounty hunter who has been going around killing people for maybe 60, 70 years. So, and also in Naruto, it's explained that your part of your chakra comes from your mental/spiritual energy, and that is directly increased by having more experiences and by training and like surviving fights and stuff like that. So Kakazu should have way more fucking experience than Nagato does, but Nagato, like there's no contest whatsoever. Like Nagato just annihilates him, and that would apply to any number of other Akatsuki members who might be older than him or might have been fighting for longer than him. Orochimaru is another good example, right? And I think Seth actually brings that up at the end of the debate in like the post like the wrap-up chat, right? Orochimaru has more like way more combat experience and skill, and has been alive for longer than fucking Sage of Six Paths Naruto, but Naruto would kick his ass, right? So even though like in his first war, like Naruto would still kick the shit, like kick his head off. So really, these are all very valid and very interesting topics, but when you break it down, there are limits to how far any of this stuff can carry you, right? Sorry, shit, I'm getting tired. Sorry. Sorry, it says, or Wonder Woman beating the guy who has a master of... Oh, yeah, that's another good example. Every martial arts in the world, even ancient ones, just lost to time because he's existed that long, and she just kind of bonk. Yeah, or like, I don't know if you played Metal Gear Solid 3, but like at the end, you can beat him by just leaving your console alone for 2 weeks, right? So, it's another great example. But let's continue.
That's
sorry.
that's
I'm-
more.
Wait. Did
I had
you
to
say
go for a minute. What are we on?
We're
right now?
talking about Madara's like battle experience is better than Sakura's.
no?
That's-
You said
it
right.
doesn't
You
matter.
said my guy. Sorry, Sakura's stronger than my guy.
That's not well. That's
it-
not what I said. I just said, would you agree that if Guy kicked Hashirama in the face, Hashirama would probably die?
Wait, before we get to that, because
Yes, if guy
Six-
guy kicked Hachirama, yeah.
Okay.
Six-
Guy was bending space. Like
Six at
Sakura
a
has no
point.
bent space, bro. Running
Six
at
at a
anyone.
point, because I'm still trying to get to a point, and we're kind of, so
Sure,
I'm
sure,
still talking
sure,
to
yeah,
Swag
yeah.
here. As a question.
Yeah, so I do appreciate the fact that both Afro and Six like make an effort throughout the debate to kind of cut through some of the arguments and some of the like heat, so to speak, and settle things down and like reconnect with one another and try to resolve their differences. So that there are some genuine moments of like positivity worth studying in this debate in terms of like the overall flow of the conversation. But I want to, now having kind of established the most interesting points of the debate, basically, like, the only other thing that kind of comes up that's novel is the Shin scaling. Basically, the idea that since Shin is able to harm, I think it's like something like this, like Shin is able to harm Naruto and Sasuke and Boruto, they should be stronger than EMS Madara, so Shin would be stronger than Madara as well. We can talk about that. We can go over the fucking, Scarlet Spring chapters and review Shin's feats and stuff like that. We already kind of did before, though. So I want to jump around and just kind of have fun, like going to a couple of highlights. So let's take out, I wrote down 29 minutes and see what Success to say here. Actually, it's not that far off. There we go. Something around here.
When has Madara done it? Actually,
Hold on.
I asked my question first, so if you're
Okay, so I think what they're talking about here is like Kabuki is like, show me a specific feat where Sakura one-shots somebody, like you're saying she's gonna do to Madara, and that's what we were talking about before, right? They're saying we don't have to actually show you a specific feat if we can just argue that she's capable of doing it, which, yes, exactly.
you're gonna demand that Six has to answer yours, you gotta answer
I'm asking
mine.
you one question.
But I asked you my question first, so if we gotta answer it, you gotta answer mine.
The question
When has Madara one-shot anybody?
Hold on. I want to hear. So
GLIZZY
One thing
King
I just wanna
donated
hear, right?
$1 through Super
I want you
Chat.
to prove that she can do that. That she can.
That's
do
what
that.
we were trying to do with the chocolate
That's
thing,
what
right?
we're trying to do.
But
And then
can you
started
prove
asking me
that?
that irrelevant question.
Yeah.
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Like I was trying to, and then y'all asked me when she's ever done it, and I'm trying to say that doesn't matter. An actual demonstration of the power isn't needed because I have statements for it that could just support the claim.
Yeah.
Statements from
So
the victims, right?
whether she's actually done it or not is completely irrelevant.
Okay.
Jesus.
Yeah, it's fucking funny. But that rebuttal from Six is perfect, right? He's just like he brings things back down to Earth, and like what's it called? Like just grounds everything, like settles things, and he's like, here is a very specific and succinct explanation as to why I don't need to literally show you her doing this. It's a hypothetical fucking debate after all, right? And in a weird way, like, I know it's not being made as a positive claim, it's more just sort of being voiced as skepticism, but Kabuki is like kind of flirting with the concept of an argument from ignorance, basically by saying like he's stopping just short of saying we don't have evidence of her one-shotting anybody, so there's no reason to believe that she can one-shot anybody, right? It's like not ideal. But let's see. I have another thing from Six, I think, written down at 33 minutes, so let's jump ahead a little bit.
Doing with
Analogies.
the scaling of this, there's no saying that even like Naruto or even Kaguya could one shot that Madara though.
Yeah, so that's
what you're describing is into an unknown. What do you mean? Like
you need elaboration, man.
I think that Afro, not to like slander him or whatever, but I think he does kind of, at least in this debate fucking 4 years ago, right? He was struggling a little bit with that concept of like wanting to see more, like much more specific, much more concrete evidence, as opposed to being willing to entertain like the more abstract evidence in the form of like a scaling chain. Sometimes words are hard. Scaling chain, right?
That's
okay. Elaborate.
So then Sakura can
Real
scale
Russell
to
donated
Naruto.
$2
She scales
through
above
Super
him, or the
Chat.
clones at least. Right?
Madara's
Okay.
debaters
And the
are looking
clones
the biggest
can swap hands
fools.
with Jubi Madara, and Jubi Madara is or it can swap hands with Jubi Madara's limbo clones.
Yep.
And his limbo clones are stated to be equal in ability to him, right?
Right.
And then Jubi Madara with 2 Renegon, the God Tree, the Jubi. What else did he get since EMS?
Well, I
The
think
Renegon
another
and
a
Stage
really
Mode.
easy way
top of
to
that.
illustrate this is actually that Naruto did in base one shot 10 Tails Madara.
Okay, yeah. So this is a good point, right? It's like Swag is saying that, it's not a good point. Actually, it's a bad point, but it's good to kind of articulate, right? So, Naruto, when he gets Sage of Six Paths powers, the way that Swag phrased it is that he one-shot Madara, and this Madara should be stronger than EMS Madara. I don't have a problem with that, but the idea is that since this version of Naruto one-shots Madara, and Sakura scales to have more chakra than Naruto, then she should be able to do this too, and therefore she'd be strong enough to blow up EMS Madara. The problem that I have with this is that this does not count as a one-shot because Madara is nearly fucking dead, right? Like, he's already, like, bleeding and panting, like, bleeding from the fucking mouth. He's already, like, fucked up. And after that, after already being fatigued and already bleeding, this happens, right? He makes this fucking face, and then he, like, flies all the way back. There's this big explosion into the God Tree, and then he literally says, "I almost died." And it looks like his fucking, like, face has been partially burned off. His arm is missing, right? And so he starts to regenerate. He literally has to regenerate part of his body because it's just been destroyed. And then right after the regeneration, Naruto shows up. So there's just no way of calling this a one-shot. Yeah, it was Naruto's first attack on him, but saying that like phrasing it as a one-shot is really disingenuous because it really doesn't depict accurately like what's happening with Madara. And then so he punches him, and this is the one shot that Swag is referring to, but I don't even really know how much damage this did, right? Like, if you compare the reaction that Madara had to Guy, again, going back to one of my favorite panels in the whole manga, this fucking expression from Madara, compare that to his reaction to what Naruto does, he didn't even seem really bothered by it. So yeah, he manages to hit a nearly just fucking died, barely just regenerated himself Madara, and push him into a tree and break the tree, but he seems to do more damage to the tree than to Madara himself. Doesn't really seem to really do much, right? And so then he gets chakra from Sun. He makes the Rasen Shuriken. Madara's able to jump out of the way, tries to use Limbo, but he's not able to, to get out of the way in time. And then Naruto throws the Rasen Shuriken at him, and so the Rasen Shuriken cuts through the whole God Tree. And it is interesting that I think it cuts Madara in half as well, right? Or it definitely severs part of his chest, so it's significant. It even seems to do more I guess traditional damage. I don't know how to phrase it, but it slices and cuts his chest in a way that Guy doesn't literally cut a hole in him with his foot or whatever. So it's comparable, right? But keep in mind also that Madara is still not necessarily fully regenerated from his the shit that he did with Guy. He doesn't seem to even think of trying to absorb the jutsu with the Predapath. So I don't think he's doing particularly well when this happens. And even so, he still survives it, this is no longer a one-shot for sure. It's the second thing that Naruto's doing to him. And keep in mind also that the Rasen Shuriken itself already has is already like an S rank jutsu that combines nature and shape manipulation. It has all those tiny swords and stuff. So it's already like an extremely effective jutsu that does like durability penetrating damage. And now it also has not just fire added to it, but fucking lava. So like a Kekkei Genkai level like fusion of ability. And that's also going into Madara as well. And he still survives it, right? He's still like talking and thinking and stuff. He's not like taken out of it. He's able to maneuver and absorb the tree. Like he's able to do shit. So no, like Naruto doesn't one-shot him. And even if he did, this is kind of completely fucking irrelevant to Sakura, because then, yeah, like we have this additional variable of him then putting on his KCM cloak, so he does get stronger over here, and then that changes the scaling to Sakura. But more to the point, it's just like, I think, and this will spill into our discussion about like Sage, Naruto versus Pain next week as well, but I think it's important to just try to remember that we can have certain memories or visions in our head of how certain scenes go down. And I'm sure if you close your eyes and you're familiar with the series at all, you've read or watched through the Pain fight, you can close your eyes and you can see in your head instances of Naruto kicking the shit out of paths of Pain, absolutely destroying them, like one-shotting them, etc. And so it's normal, it's natural that we would walk away from an assessment of those fights by saying like, okay, yeah, Naruto's one-shotting paths of Pain, Naruto one-shots Pain, etc. But Naruto gets his fucking ass kicked throughout that entire fight, like multiple times, right? Walking away from that fight with the understanding of the idea that Naruto is superior to Pain is just completely fucking ass backwards. Obviously, despite the fact that he has some moments of victory. And the same thing is true here. So it's like, really had to emphasize this in the Itachi versus Pain discussion that we had a while ago, or in the video that I did as well. But like, it's really important to always keep a manga panel close at hand and be willing to go review it and just double check that your memory of things is correct. It didn't wind up being that big of a bone of contention here, but it's still, you know, it can wind up being a bit of a derail to the chat overall. Oh, I'm starting to get a pretty bad fucking migraine, so I'm going to try to wrap things up relatively quickly. I know we didn't talk about that much of the debate, so I'm considering doing a part 2 next time. But let me just jump around a little bit and see if we can mention any other like just fun moments. So I wrote down that 55 minutes is apparently a very good argument. So let's jump over there and see what folks are saying. Start a little earlier.
That he's weaker. Like, why would Shin be weaker than EMS Madara?
All right, what does Shin do against Susanoo?
Bro, we're not answering questions for you, bro.
What does
Like,
no? What does
provide-
what do you
no,
mean?
no, 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 no. What he does-
let me
Okay,
ask-
okay,
let me-
Kabuki, why
hold on,
wouldn't Shin just blow it up?
Wait.
What do you
Let
mean?
me
Shin
hold on,
would
let me
just blow
explain.
it up, bro?
No. We don't even need to ask him that question. We don't even need to ask him that question. We don't need to answer your question of what he do to the Susanoo.
man,
You're
bro.
trying to prove that Madara is stronger than Shin. Do it
I'm
yourself.
asking you, yeah, Susanoo. He's gonna use Susanoo.
Why is that
prove it
stronger than Shin?
Prove it stronger than Shin.
What?
Why is his
Prove
Susanoo
it
stronger than Shin?
What is Shin gonna do? Throw kunais at Susanoo? He's gonna break the
Prove
Susanoo.
it stronger than
He
Shin.
couldn't do
What-
it
what-
against Sasuke. He couldn't do it against Sasuke.
Okay,
He could not break
Sasuke's just stronger than Madara. Then link
Bro, that's
those
what you're
in
gonna
inside
say,
of
bro.
the
You would
way.
never say, bro. You literally wouldn't say why Shin breaks a Susanoo when he hasn't shown he can do it.
I don't.
Okay, so here's the thing, right? If you actually go through and you read like do I still have it up? I think I closed it by mistake. So let's go to the Scarlet Spring shit real quick. All right. Naruto, where the fuck is it? Scarlet Spring. Let's go to the Shin fight. I think it's a little further on, right? Just look at this fight and see what happens in this fight and tell me if you really think that like genuinely, honestly, just look at the fights and look at the things that go down and try to imagine in your head this character going up against EMS Madara with the Nine Tails, right? Do we actually genuinely think that these characters here with what they're doing pose a threat against EMS Madara with the Nine Tails? I mean, maybe, Maybe you do. Maybe you think that the characters scale that way. But honestly, just based on like the damage to the environment, the particular tools that are being used, just the way that everything is being framed, the way that the choreography happens, right? Even like the size of this fireball, it doesn't really look like there's all that much that's super impressive happening here. I mean, obviously we have explicit statements about Sasuke not being at full power, losing his ocular abilities temporarily, or like not having them fully available for a while. Naruto doesn't go into his like big. Oh, sorry about that. Naruto doesn't go into like a big Kurama mode at first, or doesn't even pull out the chakra arms at first. But like Sakura here isn't even doesn't even activate her 100 healings like mode or whatever the hell it's called, right? Where she has the seal active and she's like drawing from the Byakugo chakra. Okay, so one way to look at this is that Shin is just so strong that he survived an attack from Sakura. That like this version of Sakura should be stronger than the Sakura from before, and so Shin scales above Madara, and since Sakura is doing this damage to Shin even in base, let alone like when she was fighting Madara with her 100 healings activated, that would mean that she scales. This is another instance of her scaling above EMS Madara. Or you could look at this as like, well, maybe the characters in Boruto are just not all that strong. Like maybe Sakura actually has been debuffed. Maybe like Ikimoto kind of like reset the power scaling a little bit, because look at the amount of, take the amount of force that's going into Sakura's like hand. Think about the amount of inertia that this character would have being like standing here, and how much force would need to be transferred into the ground. Look at the amount of damage that's done to the ground, and if you try to do a sort of like any kind of calc there, like, is there really all that much force being generated here genuinely? Especially when this character can get pierced with like metal weapons. Is this character actually all that durable? Or is this just an anti-feat for Shin? Is this sort of a recontextualization of or a recalibration of the power level of Naruto characters in this era of the story? I think there's an argument to be made that like these characters just aren't displaying the same level of investment or whatever that they did during the fucking Kaguya fight. I don't think that's particularly controversial. Now we start to see Sasuke in his like perfect Susanoo, and now if we can show like, okay, Sasuke, like Shin has a feat against the perfect Susanoo that's stronger than it or something, then we start to build a case. But again, like he comes in and he's just like throwing this massive metal at Sakura, and then does she have? Yeah, so she actually has. So Sakura's skin was pierced by Shin's weapons, I think, right? I don't remember exactly where it happens. Does it happen down here? But we see a couple of them in her arm. Don't really want to go hunting for this, but like, okay. Yeah, so I guess it just kind of happens as part of the fight. We don't see it happen, but like, look, she's like bleeding. She has two of the like shivs in her arm. And then Sasuke shows up and pierces his, like, destroys his arm with one thrust of the Susanoo blade. But we can also probably get like some scaling for the amount of force behind this blade from the explosion that's happening to the environment, right? He gets squeezed by it, and then yeah, pulls out the blades and burns the blades. So Sakura, this like Kaguya fucking up Sakura. This Sakura who, fuck, why do I keep saying that? This Sakura who scales above Kaguya, or like scales to being able to like harm Kaguya, gets penetrated by like these dinky little metal blades. So that they get, and then they get instantly, like very, very quickly evaporated by the Amaterasu, which like, you know, the Amaterasu takes a while to burn through things, so this seems to me to be another anti-feat for the blades. I guess you could argue that it's a feat for Sasuke's Amaterasu in Boruto, but again, like, I don't know. Look at the mass of the Susanoo. Like, how big is the Susanoo actually? How imposing is it? We can try to get an estimate based on like the amount of force that's generating this impact on the ground. This character who supposedly scales above EMS Madara, gets stabbed by just like metal again. So again, like maybe there's an argument somewhere that I haven't seen that these kunai or whatever they are are super super strong and like pierce through anything. They're basically like Kusanagis or something. But I don't think so. I think there's definitely room to explore the concept that maybe this guy isn't as strong as like the dude who was chopping mountains apart, right? So, no, I think there's some nuance there. Let's keep going for a little bit. I think 1 hour 25. 1 hour 2 minutes and 50 seconds. Let's see. There we go.
Yeah.
You're
Kabuki brought
trying
Shin
to-
up. We didn't bring him up.
Wait,
Kabuki brought him up.
please let me finish talking.
Yeah.
4-6.
Shin, like y'all are trying to act like power scaling is this like complicated thing that you need multiple like pieces of evidence for and all this, right? As long as Shin scales to Sakura, he is stronger than Madara by the argument we laid out before. We don't need to give any shit about Shin's experience. It's all irrelevant. All Madara's experience becomes null in the face of Shin's just speed and power because he can keep up with Sakura.
That's the thing, right?
So,
He would
Like
run up on Madara, kick him in his eyes like Jiraiya did Pain, and he would die. That's it.
And even if
Shin
we
is
give you that
irrelevant.
Madara is more experienced than Shin, which again we don't know, but even if we give that to you, it doesn't really change anything, right? Because like I mentioned earlier, Captain Ginyu's more experienced than Goten, but would still lose.
yeah, so I think like overall I agree with Six's point there and like Swag's reinforcement of that point. I think that yeah, like at the end of the day, what we're talking about here, what they're proposing anyway, is the idea that Sakura, and Shin and all of those characters are just like on a completely different level, and no amount of experience is going to make up for that, right? It's basically over from the get go just because of how much more astronomically strong and fast Sakura is compared to EMS Madara. That being said, there was something in what Six said that I did kind of find myself chafing against a little bit, which is the idea that like people act like power scaling is this complicated thing that requires multiple pieces of evidence, but it is the thing. Like I know what he's saying. He thinks that like they've established their I guess like deductive logic, like what's the term for it, like the syllogism, like the logical chain. Sakura is stronger than this is stronger than Madara, therefore Sakura is stronger than Madara. The problem that I have with that is that I do think that in and of itself that's not enough, right? Like they still actually have to demonstrate that scaling is true, and technically speaking they should also be demonstrating that like okay, so here's like a major contention that I don't think Afro and Kabuki really brought up well enough. Yes, we know that Madara has way more chakra at the end of the war than he does in his EMS self, or at least I think that's probably the case. And Kaguya also has more than that. But how much more is it really? Like, does it actually put Kaguya or even Sakura into this tier where they're just speed blitzing and doing that much damage, right? Where Sakura can actually speed blitz and one-shot him. Yes, it's more. Yes, it's a lot more. Yes, it's way more. But what is actually the quantity? What is the actual specific threshold after which you can kind of guarantee or argue that it's likely that Sakura has now entered speed blitz tier and one-shot tier? The thing about Swag and Six's whole argument here is that they're basically just saying Sakura is like way totally mega ultra awesome more stronger, and sure, maybe she is, and because of that it's probably safe to assume that she just conveniently comfortably fits into this category where she can blitz in one shot, but that hasn't actually really been demonstrated. Now I can see like Swag and Six pushing back on that and saying like, okay, with Naruto, right? Naruto can one shot Madara, and I think that this is how they kind of tried to account for that by saying that like, well, Naruto one shots Madara and Sakura is stronger than him, so she should be able to one shot Madara. But again, like without the actual context for what that one shot constituted and without actually tying it directly to Sakura, that doesn't really work either. You just have this sort of vague, unquantified Sakura's way better, so she wins. I don't think it's substantial enough to have them clear that point. So they're winning because of like from a certain definition, from a certain perspective, because Kabuki and Afro just don't have like the debate chops to be able to call out the problems with the argument semantically or whatever. But technically speaking, they're not doing an amazing job of living up to those standards themselves. They're making some good points. They're Six especially is commanding the conversation very well, but at the end of the day, when you really drill down into the bones of the arguments, there's not a whole lot there. And I think if they were using these arguments against somebody who is more skilled in like debate tactics overall, they would possibly get called out on that, and then the arguments themselves wouldn't be as compelling. So the irony of this is that like this debate has been entertaining like the 10 times that I've listened to it. It's always fun, but every single time I listen to it, I swing very, very slightly more and more in favor of Kabuki and Afro, because like basically the reason why Swag and 6 won is that the Kabuki and Afro just didn't know better and didn't have the tactics to navigate the minefield, and then Kabuki lost his shit because he does Kabuki things, right? It's Kabuki theater, as I said. So, you know, I really have much more appreciation for like I see the debate in a much more nuanced light all these years later, if that makes sense. I think I'm starting to run out of steam. It's been about 3 hours, so I think I'm gonna wrap things up. And maybe do like a bonus round next week of some additional stuff. That was the main stuff I wanted to cover, honestly. I just wanted to kind of mention like the main debates, like where things kind of fell apart, like give shout outs where credit was due and all that. I do want to mention that like the phrase answer the question has become like a little bit of a meme in my household, because I was listening to this debate while I was like showering or folding clothes or something, and my partner just heard this like blasting across the house. So there's two memes that I want to see if I can find. An app plot power up analogy. Oh shit, I didn't write it down, did I? So 134. So this is a like a legendary soundbite. I just want to play this real quick.
Where is the
1 second.
No, Kabuki. No more sidestepping it. No more sidestepping it. Why can't she? No, Kabuki. I'm gonna give you one more chance. Answer the question. Why? Where is the problem? Where is the problem in what Six and I were saying about Sakura being able to one-shot Madara? Hey.
That is the moment that SwagKage breaks. It's so great. That like the where is the problem like limit break there. It's just such a classic moment. I want to see if I could find like there's this part where he just keeps going like answer the question. If I could find that.
Why can't she? No, Kabuki.
1 sec.
You do understand in the middle.
You guys were like, that doesn't make any.
Okay, Kabuki.
Okay, I might not be able to find it, but
Cool.
okay. Oh yeah. Okay, so it's 143? Let's see. This is another great moment over here, just going over the topic of like analogies. So I actually think that Swag is great with his analogies. I think he does a great job overall of finding relevant similarities in other forms of media and using that to kind of connect back to the main point and elucidate things and try to circumvent misunderstandings. I think he is good at his analogies. But what tends to happen is he'll say like, oh, here's my analogy from Dragon Ball. And then Kabuki and Afro will be like, why are you talking about Dragon Ball? Dude, that's like a completely different series. We're not even talking about Dragon Ball right now, right? It's like, because it's a fucking analogy, right? But anyway,
I have been letting you talk.
Alright, but I still didn't put a period on what I was saying.
But you interrupted me in the first place when I said I asked my chat.
Like Kabuki literally said I was on crack, bro. Like
yeah, like he has been hurling shit at Six, and no, let me like what would happen was me or Six, we would be like, yeah, so Sakura is above X, Y, or Z character because this, and then Kabuki would be like, that's so stupid. So you think Sakura could beat Jesus if she sneezed on him? Huh, do you? Could she beat Jesus? Could she beat Jesus? Answer it. Could she beat Jesus? Could Sakura defeat Jesus Christ? That's been Kabuki
listen.
the whole debate, bro. Yeah,
listen,
whatever.
I didn't
Hey,
say-
Kabuki, cause
I
Sakura
said he's
beat
smoking
Jesus,
crack.
bro. Kabuki,
I'm
cause
saying
Sakura beat Jesus. Like, it's
smoking
so
crack.
stupid. It's
Yo,
so
you're
stupid.
screaming right now. I
And
said he's
then,
smoking crack.
and then he's like, bro, 6. Why are you making it personal, dude? Like,
This is so fucking funny. But yeah, like fair. They do tend to go off the rails quite a bit. I think I had written down that like Afro did a pretty good job of like re-centering the debate at 147, I think. So let's listen to how he kind of tried to get things back on track. So I thought that was a pretty good moment.
Definitely, that's irrelevant from your perception. But I have a different perception on it, that we're having a communication error, that to sway, to look in your direction. That's where we're at. That's where we're
So,
stuck.
Afro.
so,
Yeah,
Wait,
go
hold on,
on.
hold on one second, Swag. Hold on one second.
all right, yeah.
So, Afro, are
What's
you
up?
cool if me and you talk about the experience thing right now, and we just get to the bottom of why it's not relevant?
So, well,
I
let
mean,
me
you can-
also see if I can clarify something real quick before you guys talk. It's just about I think, like you said, there is a communication issue here, but I
Yeah.
think you're misinterpreting what we're meaning when we say irrelevant. We don't mean that you're making like a stupid point, or that you're
Yeah,
dumb,
I'm not saying
or
that.
that
I'm
it's
saying
like, or that
irrelevant.
like we're not saying, oh, we don't want to talk about that, so it's irrelevant. What we're saying is
okay.
that we don't think it has any effect on the outcome of the fight. That's it.
Okay, that right there, because I'm saying that it does. That's.
But we've
simply my
asked you
point.
for why, and you've just said because he's more experienced. It's been like circular.
And I
Yeah, so I think that there is like a bit of a gridlock here where there is an opportunity, like, I don't want to point fingers per se. I think there's an opportunity for both parties to have done a better job at clarifying their position, because basically, like, I'm gonna straw man a bit here, for simplicity's sake, but basically, like Swag and Six's position is that Sakura is just so much faster and better that she speed blitzes and everything is irrelevant, and she's just like that much faster that there's basically not even a conversation. And Afro's position is more like, well, Madara is just so much more experienced and more like, I don't know, like an overall better fighter than she is, that the speed and the power kind of goes out the window. So they're both making like similar mistakes where they're like, I can just bank on this aspect of the character and basically be like, because of this, it's a win, without actually explaining it in more context. Now, I think that like overall, Afro is being a little bit more, like, relying a little bit more on skepticism and incredulity, especially Kabuki is. Whereas Six and Swag have actually provided scans, and I don't fully agree with their, like, everything they're saying, but like they are trying to actually establish a paper trail, so to speak. So I think like they have the advantage overall, but they still haven't, like, to my satisfaction, they haven't like fully proven their point, despite bringing some evidence to bear for it, if that makes sense. So they're both, ironically, they're both kind of orbiting around the same problem, just in their own different ways, their own different perspective, which is why I appreciate the fact that they actually were able to calm things down for a second and acknowledge that, hey, maybe this is just a communication issue. Maybe this isn't like one of us trying to deceive the other or berate the other. I think we're just not getting each other. We're talking around each other. And sometimes that can be very productive, and just like recognize factually one way or another, this conversation isn't proceeding. So let's regroup, let's recap, and see if we can figure this out together as a team. So I think that's a beautiful note to end things on. I do think that those moments in the debate are genuinely appreciated, and I am glad that they were able to kind of get to that point. Obviously, that spirit of affable calm, so to speak, doesn't last very long, but it's nice when it happens, and I think it's a good lesson for us to potentially learn from. So that being said, I think that's gonna do it for me for tonight. I appreciate folks stopping by and engaging in the conversation. I hope everybody's doing well. Next Thursday, I think this upcoming Thursday, let me see, is it New Year's? I forget what the... Yeah, so next Thursday is New Year's. I might still do a stream. Like, I don't know if I'm doing a family thing. If I'm not, I might still do a Clear Obscure stream or do one on Friday, because I need to get through the fucking game. But then next Sunday, I think I'll do a fucking Sage Naruto versus Pain stream, and then we can kind of move on from there. Might be switching to more of an emphasis on gaming streams or analysis. I'm not sure yet, but we'll see. Anyway, thank you so much. If you have any follow-up questions, if you guys want me to continue and go over the remainder of the debate next time, I'm going to do a part 2. That's totally fine too. Just let me know. In the meantime, have a wonderful week and take care. Yeah, bye-bye.